one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, November 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -3, -6 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. How does the province recover from the COVID pandemic? And that is going to be laid out today. Several job hunting initiatives or job creating initiatives expected to be highlighted today when the province unveils the fall economic statement. With the latest from Queen's Park, here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
The finance minister says today's update on Ontario's books will focus mainly on the province's continued recovery from the pandemic. Peter Bethlen-Falvey saying that Ontario has so far made great progress against COVID-19. The fall economic statement will continue that fight with investments in hospitals and long-term care.
We're going to continue to protect that progress that we've made in our healthcare system to beat COVID-19. We've made great progress, but we're not going to take our foot off the pedal.
There are also plans for transit and expanded broadband in rural areas of Ontario. The latest projection for the 2021-22 budget deficit is $32.4 billion. The government has said that economic recovery from the pandemic is going to be what's used to fuel growth in the province, not spending cuts or tax hikes. At Queen's Park, Kevin Meisner, City News.
City News time 9:01. Now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's yet another cool morning for us. The wind is very light, but it still feels colder than the current temperature indicates. The high today, just 6 degrees. Lots of sunshine, though. Tonight, mainly clear, -4. And tomorrow, sun and cloud milder, up to 9 degrees. For today, the high, 6.
And right now in Ottawa, -3. It's -6 in Smiths Falls. So this is the coldest morning of autumn so far. And for many commuters, it's a not so gentle reminder it's time to get not only winter clothing on, but winter tires. Here's Carl Hansky.
You don't have to tell Elaine that this may be the coldest morning of fall so far. She's dressed in a parka.
Yes, this feels like winter today, so that's why I have to have the hoodie, the scarf, and everything.
You're in full winter mode.
That's right.
And some drivers have decided it's also time to get into winter tire mode.
Today, I switched today to winter tire.
Going to get them installed right now?
Yeah.
Andy already has his installed thanks to someone older and wiser.
She books it all, she's like, it's time to get them, and we just load them in the car and switch up cars.
Mom's the smart one.
Yeah.
Now, the best time to install winter tires is when temperatures drop below 7 degrees or before the first snowfall. Carl Hansky, City News.
City News time 9:02. If passed, the budget for OC Transpo is relying on a return to ridership at 82% of the level it was before the pandemic struck. Even with the increase in ridership, more of your paycheck will be needed per trip, the city mulling over a 2.5% transit fare increase. It comes as LRT is still down following a derailment on September 19th. Rideau Transit Group has begun simulating regular light rail service this morning. It's another step in reopening Confederation Line. Customers, you will see trains traveling the entire track. No boarding just yet, but the trains will be stopping at stations, even making announcements simulating a regular run. Now, there's no firm date for the line to reopen. We are expecting to hear possibly today what the city timeline for an updated return to service might look like. Hawkesbury OPP investigating a child luring incident at the town's skate park on Tuesday morning. A man believed to be in his mid-30s was seen speaking to a pair of 10-year-old girls attempting to lure them before a passerby intervened. Hawkesbury OPP would like to speak to the two 10-year-old girls as well as anyone else with information about this incident. Happened about 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Bit of a bite in the air this morning. And if you're not used to it, that's understandable. At 2 o'clock this morning, it was -4 in Ottawa. And it hasn't been that chilly in 7 months. Not since April 3rd, when it was -8. And then we turned the corner. And now we're turning back again. Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. We are flat out end to end all the way until noon, and we're glad you're along for the ride. There are lots of stories that we will be covering today. Local affairs, local politics, Ontario politics, city budget. In focus for us this morning, the draft budget revealed yesterday during the city council meeting, and now the budget consultation process will begin anew, and councillors will be holding information sessions in your neighborhood, and committee meetings will be held, and people will turn out, and they'll have their 5 minutes about what they like, but it will mostly be about what they don't like. And there will be calls for less of this and more of that. And then a final vote will be held at some later date, and the budget will pass, and it will look, well, let's face it, it will look remarkably similar to the budget that was presented yesterday. The mayor calls it a prudent budget. Other people describe it other ways. Now, the mayor is always, this is interesting, okay, because the mayor has always had this benchmark of the rate of inflation. Your property taxes will go up. They'll never go down. But they will go up around the cost of inflation every year. Tax increases should be around the rate of inflation, and politically that has served the mayor and his council allies very well. This proposed budget is not in that tradition. Ottawa's inflation rate, the city of Ottawa's inflation rate, Statistics Canada records the inflation rate in the major metropolitan areas, and Ottawa's inflation rate is the highest of any major Canadian city. It's more than 5%, the annual inflation rate, stronger in Ottawa than it is nationwide. The national inflation rate is tough enough at a near 20-year high of 4.4%. And the next reading on inflation is probably going to be even stronger than that, or so the big economists tell me from Bay Street. The mayor has a target for a property tax increase of 3%, which is obviously below the rate of inflation. And I'm sure for a few councillors, they are wondering why. There are other parts of the budget, of course, that are closer to the rate of inflation, like your water bill. That could go up more than 4%, much more if you live in a rural area. Police budget going up. And there are people who are not happy about that. Proposed 2.9% increase, while some in the city called for a budget freeze for the police, or even a budget cut for the police. Defund the police. The police chief and the mayor are having none of that. And the proposal is 2.9%. And the OC Transpo budget. The OC Transpo budget, to me, it was not drawn up in Ottawa, but was drawn up in Fantasyland. Fantasyland, okay? Hey, boss, the bus. It relies on ridership levels getting back to more than 80% of pre-pandemic levels by the end of next year. And I can tell you nobody thinks that's going to happen. Nobody. It's fiction. And the whole budget relies on an awful lot of help from the provincial government and the federal government. In the meantime, they will raise transit fares, and it's been now 46 days without light rail in Ottawa. We called Councillor Alan Hubley. He is the chair of the Transit Commission. We hoped to score an interview. He politely declined, and then said there's some kind of transit-related announcement coming today. We asked him what it was about. He wouldn't spill the beans. I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is, David? You still don't know what it is?
No, I don't know what it is.
No. Okay, we'll find out soon enough. We will, though, speak with several city councillors this morning. Some are known to be loyal allies of the mayor. Some, not so much. But we'll speak to 3 city councillors this morning on the Rob Snow Show. Also today, we're going to follow up on a conversation that we had yesterday with my good friend Bruce McIntyre, news reporter with the Eganville Leader. And Bruce has done some great work in the past on the Paramedic beat, and he's back on that story. And we're kind of working that story here on the Rob Snow Show. Friction between Ottawa and Renfrew County and other surrounding areas outside of Ottawa about the constant shortage of paramedics in Ottawa, shortage of ambulances. And ambulances end up having to come into Ottawa from Renfrew and take Ottawa patients to Ottawa hospitals, leaving Renfrew County communities up the line in the outlying areas short of ambulances in their own area. Now, there is money in this City of Ottawa budget for more paramedics and for more ambulances, which is, I'm sure, welcome news. But we're going to get an update on this because there's been a lot of chatter on social media that this issue is heating up again, hitting crisis levels again. And this was a massive issue a few years ago, back in 2018. It became so bad that the warden of Renfrew County at the time fired off a letter to Mayor Watson telling the mayor in no uncertain terms that people in the valley are sick and tired of subsidizing paramedic service in Ottawa. The top paramedic of Renfrew County is going to join us this morning, give us the very latest on that. In Ontario politics, that's where all the action is, really, this week. What a week it's been already in Ontario politics. There's the mini budget this afternoon, the fall economic update. They still do that in the Ontario legislature. They can't manage to do it, Mr. Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. They can't manage a fall economic update. Too busy hobnobbing with the elite in Scotland, I guess, to give us a fall economic update on the nation's finances. But at least Mr. Bethlen Falvey, the Minister of Finance, will deliver a fall economic update today at noon. This will be the last big spending plan from the Ford government before the election, which is June 2nd of next year. And we'll have a lot of coverage of the fall economic update for you today here on City News throughout the day. This week, I mean, think about what's happened this week. This week, there was the scene of Doug Ford, flanked by a pair of powerful union leaders. Ford makes nice with the unions. Smokey Thomas, OPSU, Public Sector Union, 180,000 members. And Jerry Dias, Unifor, that's Canada's largest private sector union, the old Paper Workers Union, Auto Workers Union, came together, formed Unifor. Okay. And they were there with the Premier in Milton earlier this week, praising the Premier for raising the minimum wage as of New Year's Day to $15 an hour. And very quickly, the NDP said, that's not enough. That's not enough. It should be $17.50 an hour. Oh, okay. A couple of weeks ago, you were crying that it wasn't $15. Now it should be $17.50. How's that for inflation? And all week, the New Democrats, during the question period, have been calling Doug Ford a thief. Okay, he's a thief. Doug Ford stole money from the working poor. Doug Ford stole $6,000 from the working poor. He stole $6,000 from you. How parliamentary of the New Democrats. Doug Ford is a thief. And now we have this. The vaccine mandate that wasn't and won't be. That broke yesterday afternoon. Individual hospitals, they can have their own vaccine mandate, and they can put their staff on unpaid leave for not being vaccinated against COVID-19, but that is not going to be the official policy from this government of Ontario, the Ford government. They're not going to do it in Quebec either, where they went from, this is how it went in Quebec, okay? You get the shot or you're fired. They went from that to, oh, please don't go. Please don't go. Don't go. Don't go. The whole thing will be broken without you. Yeah. In a month. Something to behold. And believe you me, here in Ontario, a lot of people have a lot to say about Doug Ford's decision on vaccine mandates. None of it kind to the Premier. So we're going to have a lot to say about that this morning. Ontario Politics This Week is every Thursday. Hey, it's Thursday. We'll be joined by our political strategist right after the 9:30 news. And I also want to stick to that topic when we do our talkback hour this morning between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310. We're going to do it rapid poll style. We'll try and take as many calls as we can during the hour on no vaccine mandates for healthcare workers, at least from the federal government. Healthcare workers refusing to be vaccinated. I don't get it. Why are you working in healthcare? I don't understand it. What are you doing in healthcare if you don't believe in the miracle of vaccines? In my own opinion, I think you should find other work. That's my opinion. But, they don't have to. According to Doug Ford, the hospital can say they have to, which is all well and good, but the Ford government is not forcing them to have a vaccine. Should a healthcare worker get the vaccine or get another job? That's going to be my question during the talkback hour this morning on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I would have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, let's talk about public transit woes and student life. Tim Gulliver joins me, President, University of Ottawa Students' Union. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you. The shutdown of light rail, how has that impacted students at the University of Ottawa? What are you hearing about that?
Well, I mean, it's been a pretty tough year for students when it comes to transit. First, we had Greyhound going out of service over the summertime, which made it hard for students to even get to Ottawa, especially from rural parts of Canada or Ontario. And now OC Transport is a mess. Like, we have a train that doesn't work. We have buses that are late, that are crowded, that are canceled. And we haven't even hit the winter or the exam season yet. So it's been a very difficult time and a pretty poor experience overall for students.
I'm wondering at the Students' Union, if you have any numbers or any data, the percentage, say, of the student population at the University of Ottawa that would rely on public transit, for example. Do you know offhand what that number would look like?
Not offhand, but certainly it's not a majority of students who live in Sandy Hill. Like, we have students who live in Gatineau, students who live in other suburbs of Ottawa, students who live, past center town. So public transit is the most affordable and, well, it's supposed to be the most reliable way to get to campus. But clearly this year, that hasn't been the case.
Yeah. And I mean, you have a light rail stop right there, right?
Well, yeah.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So if light rail doesn't stop there, and it has to stop there in 46 days, and we don't really know when it will stop there again.
Yeah.
Hopefully sometime before the holidays, but fingers crossed. What buses serve the University of Ottawa then? What are some common routes, and how have those bus routes been affected?
Well, there's the R1 that stops close to campus. Obviously, the R1 is not a comparable service. It's often crowded or very, very late and quite unreliable. So the R1 is probably the main bus service. There's a couple others that go through the Sandy Hill neighborhood and go
along Rideau Street and whatnot, right?
Yeah. So the primary way to get to campus on public transit, because of the changes that were made to bus routes when the LRT came into place, is now the R1. And I'm sure you've heard from a lot of residents, Rob, that the R1 is not the best thing in the world, to be honest. And so we're sharing the same challenge that the residents are facing across the city.
Okay. I want to talk about the UPass because you're getting substandard service. Everyone who relies on public transit is getting substandard service. There's just no doubt about it.
Yeah.
The difference is with the general population, the general ridership is they have the option of paying the fare or not. They have the option of using their Presto card or not. That's not the case with students because, as I understand it, buying the UPass is mandatory. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the UPass came in on a student referendum several years ago.
Yeah.
And the idea was it would allow students living across Ottawa to come to campus on really much more affordable rates than buying a monthly pass. And it also connects students living closer to campus with the wider public transit system, be able to get across the city, get to work and whatnot. So we support the UPass in principle.
Right.
But,
and I'm looking at it here. I mean, it's a fairly sizable expense here for a student, okay? It says fall 2021, winter 2022, $436, right? It's significant. If you just want it for the winter, it's $218. And if you just want it for the spring, summer, it's $212. So if you're on a student budget, I remember those days, tight days, it's a significant sum. But here you have no light rail. And at the same time, there are promises for, quote unquote, free transit for the month of December. Well, it's not really free for a student. You've already paid for it, right? You must be hearing about this from students, I suspect.
Absolutely. I'm not disagreeing with you. And this year, the public transit service has been subpar, and students are going to be the only ones paying for transit in December. That's the reality. And the mayor seems making it free because he can escape some responsibility or backlash with the LRT. I'm not too sure what the political implications are. But the reality is students are now going to be paying for free transit. So there's clearly an issue here. The trains aren't working. The buses are late. exam season's coming up. Students are not coming to campus as frequently as in previous years. If that was the case, if it wasn't for the pandemic, we'd definitely be hearing a lot more about this. But we still are hearing a lot of annoyance from students who are just find it really hard to get to campus to begin with, which has all sorts of implications on student life, on student services, and a whole bunch of other things. We want people to be on campus, at least those who feel safe doing so. And it's really difficult to recreate that campus experience and get back to our new normal if we can't get to campus to begin with. So,
okay, Tim Gulliver, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yep, the president of the University of Ottawa Students Union. Yeah, free transit, isn't that? You know, they're touting the $7 million plan, free transit in December. But if you own a U-Pass, you've already spent more than $400 on your transit, discounted transit. But it's not discounted to the point that it's free. So there you go. That's very interesting. Coming up right after the 9:30 news, Ontario politics this week. So many things to get into. The fight for 15. Doug Ford raises the minimum wage as of New Year's Day. It will be $15 an hour, but this is the same government, and this will be a criticism that will follow the premier right into the election in June. They canceled the minimum wage when they first took office because they thought the move from $11.60 to $14 and then $14 to $15 in a matter of 13 months was just too fast. They were listening to the business community. But now they're moving from $14.35 up to $15 as of January 1st. So we'll get into that. No mandatory shots for healthcare workers. That could still be the hospital's policy, but it's not. There's not going to be a vaccine mandate for healthcare workers imposed province-wide by the Ford government. We'll talk about the fall economic update. GTA West, the big election issue is going to be the politics of highways, specifically Highway 413, and there's going to be probably some news about money for Highway 413, a quote-unquote roadmap for Highway 413 and something else called the Bradford Bypass as the Ford government looks to woo the suburban voter. And we'll talk about what I think is a spat, a shot from the Ford government at Jim Watson over 46 days without light rail and this decision to fire off a letter and threaten to withhold $60 million in light rail funding. All of that is coming up right after the news during Ontario Politics This Week here on City News.
now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, November 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -1 degree, and Smiths Falls -4. Here's what's making news this hour. Provincial Finance Minister Peter Bethlen-Falvey says Ontario has so far made great progress against COVID-19, and he will unveil a fall economic statement this afternoon, which continues the fight. He says it will also be about building Ontario, including plans for transit, highways around the Toronto area, broadband in rural areas, hospitals, and long-term care. Hawkesbury OPP looking for help. They're trying to solve a child luring case. Now, this is from Tuesday morning around 11 o'clock at the Hawkesbury Skate Park. A passerby observed a man, apparently in his mid-30s, trying to lure two 10-year-old girls. The passerby intervened, telling the girls to run away. They did. The OPP says it would like to speak with those two girls and anyone else who may have witnessed that incident. A traffic note this hour from the OPP. As we've been telling you about, the Pinecrest off-ramp from the 417 is closed now to all vehicles except buses for LRT Phase 2 construction. Now, the OPP says some drivers are ignoring the closed signs and driving through that off-ramp anyway. That endangers the lives of construction workers. The Pinecrest off-ramp from the 417 is closed until summer 2023 to all but buses. City News Time, 9:31. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's time for Ontario politics this week with Lindsay Maskell, former advisor to Premier McGuinty. Good morning, Lindsay.
Good morning, Rob.
Hey, it's great to hear from you. And Andrew Brander is senior consultant, Crestview Strategy, former advisor to the Ford government. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning.
Hope everyone is well.
Absolutely.
Good. Okay, let's talk about the fight for 15. The Ford government announced this week minimum wage going up to $15 an hour. What'd you think of the announcement, Lindsay?
Starting with me.
Yeah, sorry, Lindsay. Go ahead. Yeah,
well, it's definitely overdue since it was originally planned for 2018, and I appreciate that was pointed out. It's tough watching people celebrate something that was theirs that was taken away to then be returned. In contrast, remember Alberta's minimum wage has been $15 for a long time. We are far behind other provinces. So it's good news that it's finally happening. It's just, it's a long overdue, and especially in a time where, the cost of living with COVID, supply chain issues, everything has increased. So it's just tough to watch a celebration of something that should have been theirs, that had been taken away, to finally have been returned.
Okay. Why do you think he's doing it now, Lindsay?
It's an election year.
Okay. It's really that simple. Is it really that simple, Lindsay?
It is that simple. It was a smart thing to do in terms of, it's been a number of years since this was rolled back. Remember, it wasn't just
2018,
that it was rolled back. So people don't have a long memory to that. Mm-hmm. There's also new workers in the workforce that will just think this is great news, and they don't have the background. And it is, it is definitely, we're going to be seeing an election-style spending fall economic statement and all of these items leading into it. So, yeah, definitely a good election play.
You like the strategy politically. It's smart strategy.
I can respect the play even if it's not in my court.
Gotcha. Okay, Andrew, what do you think, Andrew? The move to 15.
I think Lindsay's answer is exactly why Doug Ford just did it. And look, this is going to put the Liberals and the NDP in a really tough position. To be completely honest, I felt a little bit like I was trapped in some kind of alternate universe yesterday as I was watching Question Period, hearing, the Premier talk about his announcements receiving support from his good friend, Jerry Dias. and Andrea Horvath complaining about the price of gas. I was utterly perplexed.
You're like, whoa, what's going on here? Did I wake up in Bizarro World?
I literally, if I was watching it on closed caption, I think I'd have reassigned those lines.
Yeah.
But look, I mean, it's common practice for parties to sort of reposition and broaden their appeal as we get closer to the election. This is what the Tories have been doing with all of these working for workers announcements, as they like to call them.
Yeah. Working for workers. That's the name of the act, actually, is the Working for Workers Act.
That's it. And these announcements, minimum wage, dedicated funding for skills training, they're looking to attract investments in Ontario and create sort of those well-paying jobs. But it's also about resetting the relationship with workers in the province. The Premier always promised to be a champion for them. And as I said, as Ford sort of moves more into the center, he's going to leave really very little room for Del Duca and Horvath to fight it out on the left, which leads to sort of those incoherent lines of attack that we saw from Horvath yesterday. So as Ford moves into the further into the center on this, he's looking to wedge the two parties fighting it out on the left.
Okay. What did you think of just the scene, Lindsay? You have Smokey Thomas there from OPSU. Okay, one of the biggest public sector unions in Ontario, 180,000 members working in everything from education to the jails, healthcare, schools, liquor stores, big union, lots of members, and Jerry Diaz, okay, largest private sector union in the country, and they're flanking Doug Ford in Milton. Doug Ford. These are unions that have funded the Working Families Coalition in the past, and with Jerry, I mean, he's known as ABC. Jerry, anybody but conservative, right? So, but there they are with Ford. So, what does that say?
Well, we actually saw this starting in 2018, where in both with Ford and with a commitment that Monty McNaught had made to try to improve the relationships with the unions. That has definitely been a weak point for the Conservatives for decades, and was something that Ford wanted to change, because he's not a typical Conservative in that way of not having to follow that playbook of having to have a fight with the union going on at all times. And so we saw that in 2018 with the support of LiUNA, supporting Doug Ford, and have seen them work over the last 4 years on that. Now, the question is, can you undo a couple of decades of damage? I think we'll continue to see unions be both wanting to make sure that Ford continues on this path of being having a strong plan for workers, while also keeping their options open, knowing that it's a very volatile field and electorate at this time, and still quite early. And it's not actually that big of a surprise with directly. I think, it's a full disclosure, I do have clients in the union sector, and we have seen them make such an effort, not so much for, the minimum wage issue. These things still have sat for a long time. They have certainly been trying to improve the relationships with the union leadership over the last 4 years.
Well, I'll believe there's labor peace when I see the leader of a teachers union praising Doug Ford. But,
hope you're not holding your breath.
Teachers union leaders are not known to be all that enthralled with any premier of Ontario, no matter the political stripe.
I also don't think that's where they're putting their efforts, right? So it is some of the other public sector unions, the trade unions. So they are strategic about their outreach.
Okay, so let's talk about a hot story this morning. No mandatory shots for healthcare workers as a government policy. Now, the individual hospital administrations can still have their own policy for their own workers, and we have seen hospitals put healthcare workers on unpaid leave. But it's not a provincial mandate. What's your reaction to that decision, Andrew?
look, so I guess I should say, and we have talked about this before. Very clearly, I believe that our healthcare practitioners should set an example for the rest of us by getting vaccinated. However, I have talked about the danger of this policy in general in terms of the resource shortage and the impact that would have, possibly being greater impact on the system than a few people not being vaccinated. My problem where I take an issue with this position is I think it needs to be a consistent policy across the full healthcare continuum. We've seen the mandatory vaccinations already instituted in long-term care homes. And if someone in that setting, working in that setting, remains unvaccinated for whatever reason, and now the same standard is not being set or expected for a RPN or another healthcare practitioner working in a hospital setting, then nothing's going to prevent that person from leaving that long-term care home where they are desperately needed to go to a hospital. So I think whatever the policy, either way, it should be a consistent one across the entire sector. And so I think this half and half approach is not a great policy.
Okay, let's listen to some of how this all rolled out yesterday. It was Premier Ford did not meet the media yesterday. A statement was issued, and then it was up to Christine Elliott, the deputy leader and the health minister, to kind of take all the heat for it. And heat she took. This is Christine Elliott taking a reporter's question yesterday.
Minister, where is the Premier's claim of tens of thousands of healthcare workers coming from?
Well, that was a number that was based on the Premier's understanding of the situation before the letter was sent out. We know that there would be some significant job losses if we were to proceed with mandatory vaccination right now, but we still support the decisions of individual hospitals to do as they see best.
Okay, Christine Elliott. Then it was over to Andrea Horvath, the leader of the opposition. On this figure, 10,000, where are you getting this number from, 10,000?
Do you believe this claim of tens of thousands of healthcare workers that could be gone from the workforce in Ontario?
Well, when I think of everyday Ontarians, I can't imagine that they would buy that. If the government's making decisions based on facts, then they should be showing people what it is that they're making their decisions on. And the minister has just indicated she's not prepared to do that. So, of course, I expect that Ontarians are skeptical.
Okay. And finally, the Liberal health critic, local MPP John Fraser.
Reject this suggestion by the Premier that it's going to be tens of thousands of healthcare workers off the front line?
It's not based in any fact. It's hard to accept an argument that doesn't have any numbers around it, that the government won't be transparent about. Quite frankly, it's actually fear-mongering. Like, what they're saying is if we do this, bad things are going to happen. Well, not at UHN, not at CHEO, not at Queensway Carleton, and I'm sure you can list off some other hospitals.
All right, so that's John Fraser. So that's kind of how people want to know, where's this number 10,000 coming from? Where's this number 10,000 coming from? But what's your reaction to that decision by Premier Ford, Lindsay Maskell?
Well, it was pretty shocking considering just, to Andrew's point, the spectrum of people who do have a vaccine mandate from this province. Union training centers, mandatory vaccine requirements. Due to being in a classroom setting of maximum usually 16. So the fact that the rule is so different for the people who, are frontline people that you would encounter walking into a hospital is just absolutely shocking. I appreciated Christine Elliott's use of language, of the understanding of the situation. Which is wrong. That number, there is no way. I think that's the only thing I tweeted last week or through the last week because I had a major project due. Is like, what? Like, that number just doesn't make sense with the vaccine rates. That would mean healthcare workers are not in support of the vaccine because they are at a way higher unvaccinated rate than the general public. So it is pretty shocking. It's strange that this is the group that they're going to be the most lax with, right? Considering all of the other sectors that do have an enforced vaccine mandate. And it would, they absolutely need to be the people setting leadership, that people need to feel safe when they go to a hospital. And that we don't need to be in a fear-mongering position about people's interactions with the healthcare system. We are still in a pandemic. There is still the risk of other things that could happen. People's fears about backlogs and the services being there for them. This is not the sector that should be getting a pass when other people have done what's right and stepped up to protect Ontarians.
All right, we'll stop here. When we come back, Fall Economic Update Day. Key messages from the Minister of Finance. What are you expecting to hear when we return? Ontario Politics this week on City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Centre. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people, I think, know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well, too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
So we're following just a little bit of breaking news here about light rail that David, our producer, has made me aware of. City News has confirmed with the Transportation Safety Board that there was an incident with one of the trains at the Belfast Yard. One of the trains hit, quote unquote, an object, and there was some damage to the train. But when did this happen, David? When did that happen?
November 2nd.
Oh, a couple of days ago. Okay, yeah. A couple of days ago. So we've confirmed that. But nobody was hurt or anything like that.
No, the TSB's statement to us says it's what they call a Class 5 incident, which is low on their list of importance.
I wonder if that was the transit-related announcement that the transit chair was...
well, remains to be seen.
Talking about today. There's going to be some kind of transit-related announcement. All right, but again, just another incident that fills you with the warm and fuzzies and instills all kinds of confidence in our public transit system, where it's been now 46 days without light rail. 46 days. We're here with Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander. They join us every Thursday morning for Ontario Politics This Week. They're both in Toronto. You could take the subway in Toronto today, I'm assuming, Lindsay, if you wanted to. Could hop on the streetcar if you wanted to.
Yeah.
All right.
With
take a GO train.
Heading to Ottawa next week, I'm like, please be back. I was a user of it.
Yeah, it's not happening. But you could take a GO train if you wanted to, Andrew, I suppose. Get on the GO train. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. What do you think the reaction would be in Toronto if the TTC was shut down for 46 days? Like people would be going out of their minds, right?
Well, and particularly in, look, we have had the benefit of the transit system, though not, to be clear, not a great transit system. It is running.
It's running, okay,
It is
right,
running,
right,
but it is woefully does not serve the population well, and it's obviously not anywhere near a world standard of public transportation. But at the same time, there's also a big difference in Toronto of that it would be especially outrageous because it would be so targeting our lowest income workers. And the way that they can get around, Toronto. Yeah. But in all fairness, I will say this: for those of us that live along Queen West, we in 4 years, our streetcar has not been running for 2 of them.
Okay. Andrew, are you well served by public transit where you are?
I am. I'm at the corner of King and John. I can get anywhere very quickly and very easily. So, But obviously, the outer.
This was on our list of topics to talk about anyway. So we have this, it's a Ministry of Transportation, the Ministry of Transportation Capital Project Oversight Branch. Okay? Whatever that is, the director of that particular branch of the Ministry of Transportation. Okay? Capital Project Oversight Branch. Okay? We are overseeing the capital project of light rail here in Ottawa. This letter is sent to the top transit people in Ottawa saying we're going to hold back $60 million of funding from the Phase 1 light rail. It's not operating right now. We want you to check out, we want to be satisfied that everything is fixed, basically. Here in Ottawa, you have the city manager there and Mayor Watson saying, well, that's just the province, doing its due diligence. I don't know. I think that's a shot. What do you think? Don't you think that's a shot, Lindsay? Is that a shot? A political shot?
And especially, this is something that, will continue to be always, public transit is always going to be a bit of a political football. Right. Projects started, canceled, holdbacks, plays, municipal. In Toronto, our version of that is Smart Track. When was the last time?
Oh, yeah, Smart Track. Yeah.
So it is definitely a play, and it's tough because really the truth is I'm of the school of politics that we should actually remove the politics out of public transit. It is really there are smart planners and computers and technology that can make all of these decisions based on the right thing to do and population growth, and all of this should be out of the hands of decision makers that have political influence.
Andrew, do you think that's a shot? I mean, that a letter like that would kind of be leaked to the media to say, oh, look here, right? What do you think? What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah, I think it's certainly tapping into the frustration and look, as Lindsay said, Smart Track, former iteration of the Ontario line here in the city. But look, I think the premier has been very clear that he is a big proponent of transit projects, these infrastructure projects. I think we're going to see more of those today in the Fed. In terms of helping people get around, but that's the frustration, right? And when people can't spend as much time at home because they have to deal with these inconveniences, I think that goes down to Ford's backing as like a municipal politician, right? And his understanding that it's the little things that matter. So this is absolutely political. And when you were talking about 46 days, I don't think Torontonians would put up with a 46-hour outage, let alone.
Good point. Good point, Andrew. Good point. Yeah. So you think there will be some talk about touting the government's record, and any future investments into public transit will be part of the mini budget economic update today from the Minister of Finance. What else do you think is going to be in there, Andrew?
Yeah, I think you're going to see two themes today from the fall economic statement, which we used to call FES or Festivus, back at Queen's Park. Look, first you're going to talk. Minister Bethlenfalvy is going to talk about reinforcing and protecting the progress that the province has made against COVID-19, and second, and more importantly, it's a recognition of where we are as a province to be able to move forward, get Ontario moving again. So big infrastructure projects, we've already seen those announcements in hospitals, long-term care units, and I think we're going to see a commitment today on a bunch of new big infrastructure projects focused on connectivity. Think of it as highways, hospitals, housing, and high-speed internet.
Okay, 4-H. 4-H. Okay. All right. Okay. Lindsay?
Yes, the 4-H's, because, government acronyms, we also called it FES.
Okay. All right.
Try to get the budge to catch on, but, not so much. It is definitely going to be, as I said earlier, a big spending fall economic statement. Remember, the throne speech was shockingly light. And just was, a very minor reset, but did start to signal that there would be, a lot coming on future infrastructure. And it is, which is very much needed, but we're going to see this, a big focus. You'll see it's going to reveal a lot about where their regional political focus is going to be, because these projects will obviously have a home. The 4-H's will have homes of geographical location that will be of political importance to the Ford government going forward, which does mean, though, that there are winners and losers today in the world of infrastructure announcements. So it will be very interesting to watch, and it'll be interesting to see them roll out and continue to spend in a way that isn't consistent with the way that they have talked about government spending.
Right. But maybe have a map of Ontario handy when they're making these announcements. May point to where they think they need votes and shore up support, in other words.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay, very interesting. Look, great to talk to both of you today. Thanks so much. It's been so busy. It's great to get caught up.
Have a great week.
Yeah, you too. Lindsay Maskell and Andrew Brander. That's Ontario Politics This Week. The Talkback Hour is next on City News.
one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, November 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, -1 degree, -4 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. The provincial government road back to pandemic recovery reportedly includes a new highway, for example, around the Toronto area, and several job-creating initiatives expected to be highlighted today when the province unveils the fall economic statement. With more on this, here's City News reporter Kevin Meisner.
The finance minister says his fall outlook will focus mainly on the province's continued recovery from the pandemic. Peter Bethlen-Falvey says Ontario has made progress against COVID-19, and he'll continue that fight with investments in hospitals and long-term care.
We're going to continue to protect that progress that we've made in our healthcare system to beat COVID-19. We've made great progress, but we're not going to take our foot off the pedal.
NDP leader Andrea Horwath says the Ford government can really help healthcare by scrapping Bill 124, which caps raises for nurses at 1%.
Then it's driving healthcare workers out of the sector. It's driving nurses out of Ontario.
At Queen's Park, Kevin Meisner, City News.
City News time 10:02, and now the forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's yet another cool morning for us. The wind is very light, but it still feels colder than the current temperature indicates. The high today just 6 degrees. Lots of sunshine, though. Tonight, mainly clear, -4, and tomorrow, sun and cloud milder up to 9 degrees. For today, the high 6.
And right now it's -1 in Ottawa, -4 degrees in Smiths Falls. Provincial police say they're investigating a child luring case in Hawkesbury. The OPP says a man about 35 years old spoke to a couple of 10-year-old girls at the Hawkesbury Municipal Skate Park. This was on Tuesday morning. Now, investigators say the man was attempting to lure the girls, but a passerby intervened and told them to run away. They did. Police say they would like to speak to the two girls and also anyone who witnessed or has information about what happened there. A tip from the public led police to make a drug bust in Vanier. Complaint of drug dealing from an apartment on St. Anne Avenue made to the Vanier Neighborhood Police Response Team. An investigation began, and 2 days ago, a raid on an apartment along the 200 block of St. Anne resulted in 2 arrests. Now, a large quantity of drugs was seized, including coke, fentanyl, meth, drug paraphernalia, and cash. 31-year-old Anthony Marini and 28-year-old Christine Sabaran are facing a number of drug charges. City News time 10:03. If passed, the budget for OC Transpo is relying on a return to ridership at an 82% of the level before the pandemic struck, before the year is out next year. Even with the increase in ridership, more of your paycheck will be needed per trip, the city mulling over a 2.5% fare hike. It comes as the LRT is still down following a derailment on September 19th. The simulated regular light rail service, though, did resume this morning. It's another step in the reopening. Now, you may see trains traveling at different speeds along the entire track, stopping at stations, also making announcements as though there were passengers. There is no firm date, though, for the line to reopen. We're expecting an update possibly later on today on the city's timeline. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Yes or no, why or why not? We'll do it rapid poll style. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Yes or no, why not? The wait will not be long. It's 750-1310, 750-1310. We're hoping to move through the calls like lickety-split. Okay. The government says, yes, an unvaccinated healthcare worker could be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital if the hospital doesn't have its own vaccine mandate, because the government is not going to impose one province-wide, because it says it's worried about staffing shortages making the backlog of procedures worse. Now, I happen to disagree with this decision. I think healthcare workers, every single one of them, should be vaccinated And if a healthcare worker isn't vaccinated, I think they shouldn't be working in healthcare. This is my opinion. Okay, what is yours at 750-1310, 750-1310? This is the biggest story in the province. It's the biggest story of the morning to me. Mandatory vaccination for all healthcare workers. It's not happening from the Ontario government, and it's not happening in Quebec where they really look like fools. Okay, but I want your reaction to this news from the Ford government. Broke yesterday afternoon. We're all over it again today. Sparked a lot of backlash. I mean, a sample, just a sample, okay? Some of the headlines are all over the place on this one. City News. Hey, that's us. Ford says no to mandatory COVID-19 vaccination policies at hospitals, despite many already implemented. CTV News. Doug Ford refuses to make COVID-19 vaccines mandatory for Ontario hospital workers. CBC News. Ford won't impose COVID-19 vaccine mandates for Ontario healthcare workers. I always find this interesting. It's always Ford. It's usually not the Ontario government or the Premier or Premier Ford. It's Ford or Doug Ford. Like the whole government's like a one-man show. Toronto Star, though, a little bit different. It says Ontario won't force vaccines on hospital workers because of potential for staffing shortages and surgery delays, Doug Ford says. Toronto Sun, Ford nixes province-wide mandatory vaccination order for healthcare workers. So you get the idea. He's getting holy heck for this decision, too. Let's play again. Andrea Horvath asked about this claim. It could be 10,000 workers. We might lose 10,000 workers if we had a vaccine mandate. Andrea Horvath, yesterday taking a reporter's question.
Tens of thousands of healthcare workers that could be gone from the workforce in Ontario?
Well, when I think of everyday Ontarians, I can't imagine that they would buy that. If the government's making decisions based on facts, then they should be showing people what it is that they're making their decisions on. And the minister has just indicated she's not prepared to do that. So, of course, I expect that Ontarians are skeptical.
Okay, so that was Andrea Horvath. This was local Liberal MPP. He's the health critic for the Liberals, John Fraser.
Well, there's a reason they won't do it. And that reason is their arguments are full of holes. They're like Swiss cheese. They're worse than Swiss cheese. I mean, it's almost absurd, what they're suggesting. And the only thing that I can see is, the Premier's decided to listen to really anti-vaxxers more than he's listening to the experts.
John Fraser. So, again, our question is, should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Yes or no? Why or why not? We'll try and move through the calls as quickly as we can. See how many we can fit in between now and noon. Let's get right to it here. Mark in Stittsville. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Rob.
Morning, Mark.
Yes, I think they should be able to work still because
why is that?
We need them, and you can still spread it even though you're double vaccinated. I'm double vaccinated, but I know that some people aren't, and
right.
That's their choice, really.
Okay, well, yeah. You're worried about, staffing shortages, I guess, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, all right, Mark. Thank you. 750-1310. 750-1310. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Tony in Perth. What do you say, Tony?
I think they definitely should be allowed to.
Okay, why is that, Tony?
Because we already have nursing shortages as it is. If you go to any of the local hospitals in the county, you're facing 6 to 7 hour wait times as it is, and that's pre-pandemic. So it's just absurd to tell somebody who's willing to go in and work in our healthcare sector that they're not allowed to work or can't give help because, there's a lot of other diseases out there other than COVID that need to be treated. So.
All right, Tony, thank you. Thank you for your call, sir. Okay, there we go. I'm kind of surprised at the start here, but let's see where we are by the end of the hour. Paul. Good morning, Paul. You're on City News. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. And why do you say that, sir?
Basically, we're starting
a reason, excuses. So if it's a shortage of staff, we can use that same example for police officers, truck drivers, restaurant waiters. Where does it stop? So again, the government has to put his suspenders on and say, hey, that's the law, and you have to respect it. So that's
put on the big boy pants, you're saying, Paul.
Basically, yes.
Yeah,
because
okay.
if you're starting to find excuses, you have excuses for everything.
Okay. Now, what do you think about the Ford government says, well, we could lose, 10,000 workers. What if I don't know if that number is accurate. They didn't really do a convincing job providing any evidence that number is accurate, but that's the number they're going with. But what if the government sticks with this vaccine mandate? They had a vaccine mandate, and it meant 10,000 people would leave the healthcare system. They wouldn't be allowed to leave. It wouldn't be allowed in the healthcare system anymore.
They would probably leave for about 1 or 2 days to see what's happening, and then they would realize they have to pay their bills, heating costs, and everything, inflation, and they'd be running back, asking to be
I'm vaccinated. Can I please have my job back? In other words, yeah. Okay, interesting. Okay, thank you, Paul. Thank you. Put the pressure back on the worker. Interesting. Okay. All right. Anne in Ottawa. You're on City News. Anne, should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
No. But what I'm wondering is, the patients in the hospital, are they even allowed to be told where there's somebody that's treating them as unvaccinated?
Probably not, I would suspect.
I see this as a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Oh, okay.
Your poor elderly mother or whatever gets COVID while she's in the hospital, being treated for something else because this goof doesn't. I'm with exactly what you said when you said get into another line of work. It's irresponsible, and you're surrounded in a place where you see medical miracles every day, and you're shunning vaccines. It's crazy.
Okay.
It's nuts.
All right, it's crazy and it's nuts. All right, Anne, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. In Nepean, a wonderful place to be in. Pat is there. Pat?
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Pat. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
Of course.
Of course. Okay. Why do you say that, sir? Okay.
Well, I don't see the problem. I mean, if you have...
Well, how about they're unvaccinated and they're working with sick people?
Sure, but if you had a population of, 27 people out of the entire thousands of people at CHEO, is that not herd immunity? Do we not have herd immunity here?
Okay, I don't know if we have achieved herd immunity, but Pat, if you had a loved one at CHEO, you would be comfortable with an unvaccinated nurse, doctor, cleaner, therapist, whatever the case might, treating your child? Really? You would be? You would be.
No problem.
Yeah. Holy cow.
It's happened. It was like that for the last 18 months. Well, what's the difference now?
What's the difference now? Well, the difference now is there's an added layer of protection. The difference now is there's an added layer of protection and prevention, Pat.
Okay, have there been lots of COVID outbreaks at CHEO?
Pat, for Father of the Year, 1014. This is City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from a 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you've got 10 other people working for you. You're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, just be really responsible and saying we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And So it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
Time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
All right. 1/4 of the way through, the score is 3-2 on this one. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Yes or no? Why or why not? We're doing a rapid poll. The wait's not long. The Ontario government remarkably says yes, a healthcare worker in Ontario can work in an Ontario hospital and not need to be vaccinated against COVID-19 unless the hospital has its own vaccine mandate. But the government is not going to impose one province-wide, the Ford government. Now, I disagree with that decision. You know me. Crazy Rob Snow. But nevertheless, what's yours? What's your opinion here? Where are we going? Steve in Ottawa. Steve. Morning, Steve. Oh, sorry, it's not Steve. It's Sylvie. That's my old 50-year-old eyes there. Belied me, Sylvie. Sorry, go ahead, Sylvie. Yes or no, Sylvie?
I think they should be vaccinated.
Should be vaccinated.
I'm a school bus driver, and I'm vaccinated to protect the kids in my bus.
Good stuff.
So
Did you have to get vaccinated, though, Sylvie? Did you have to get vaccinated?
No, but we would have to be tested twice a week.
Have to be tested twice a week. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But
okay.
no, I think everybody should be double vaccinated. They're obviously working, and the numbers are going down.
But let me get this straight now. This is curious to me. You work for a school bus company.
I do.
And you don't have a vaccine mandate. You didn't have to be vaccinated.
No.
Oh, that's interesting to me, too.
No, but they did ask if we had our vaccine and if we were willing to sign papers and send them in, which we have.
Okay. Yeah. All right. But still, you didn't have to.
No, but at the same time, I feel like I have a responsibility to all those kids on my bus.
See, you're doing your civic duty, Sylvie. You're doing the right thing, in my opinion.
Exactly,
yeah.
And that's
God
the way
bless you.
healthcare, more so than us, considering the profession that they chose to be in.
Yep, okay.
They have a duty to protect the people.
Thank you, Sylvie. Thank you for your call. All right, Joanne, Orleans. Joanne.
Hi.
Hi, Joanne.
I'm so thrilled that Ford has done this. I think it's absolutely the right position to take. Other provinces have seen the ramifications of this draconian measure, and I'm glad he's come out ahead of it. And the headlines that you read, they're just the partial story, right? Because no one who is not vaccinated is walking around knowingly spreading the virus. They have to be tested. That would be the second half, that Ford balances employee rights with health care. So, of course, if you don't want to be vaccinated, you have to be tested. Mm-hmm. Some are required to be tested every 48 hours. The previous caller said twice a week. In fact, it's going to be these vaccine hesitant people who are probably going to protect us, because those of us who are vaccinated, we could be unknowingly spreading the virus. I see this as a huge win. There is never a policy that doesn't affect a culture. And the idea that he's balancing this with the overall rights that Ontarians and Canadians have, perfect balance. Let's remember, they're not just not getting vaccinated. They're not getting vaccinated, and they are being tested regularly. And there's not an employer in Ontario who should have done it differently.
Okay. Well, there are. There are lots of them. They're wrong. Okay. We rarely disagree, Joanne, but we disagree on this one in a big, big way. In the Globe and Mail this morning, the great healthcare columnist Andre Picard, he just hammers both Ontario and Quebec for surrendering what he says to the anti-vaxxers. And Picard says that all the talk about staffing shortages is not really all it's made out to be, and it just highlights really the chronic underfunding of the healthcare system in both provinces. He writes this morning, in this country, we now find ourselves with premiers claiming they are powerless to act instead of actually acting. It's a peculiar situation where airlines are doing more to protect passengers from COVID-19 than governments are doing to shield patients in hospitals and long-term care. Both Ontario and Quebec trotted out the same lame excuses. A mandate is unnecessary because lots of healthcare workers are already vaccinated, and suspending unvaccinated workers would cause massive staff shortages and hardship. Never mind that these two arguments are largely contradictory. What matters here as much as anything is the symbolism. Capitulating to a whiny minority of self-centered, ill-informed workers, the roughly 3 to 4% who still refuse to be vaccinated, we are telling the large majority of dedicated, civic-minded workers that doing the right thing doesn't matter anymore. That's in the Globe this morning. Bonnie in Ottawa. Good morning, Bonnie.
Good morning.
Good morning. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
First of all, let me tell you that I'm a registered nurse.
Okay.
And I do work in one of the institutions in Ottawa, and absolutely not is my idea.
Should not be allowed to work in a hospital. Should not be allowed to work.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I mean, we are the people that are looking after these sick and I'm floored already that healthcare workers who are supposed to have knowledge and know science don't want this already. So I say no, and if they are allowed, they have to test before every shift at their own cost, not the hospital's cost, because it is extremely expensive.
Okay.
And I don't want to work with unvaccinated people. I've protected myself, my family, my patients, and I would like to see every other healthcare worker do that. If you care for anybody in your life, you would want to protect them. So I don't get this. And as far as Mr. Ford goes, I think he is trying to just kick back a little bit because of Bill 124, which every nurse despises him for.
Yep.
So now he's saying, no, I'm not going to make you go off work. No, you won't lose your job. Let me tell you, Mr. Ford, it is too late for you in the healthcare field. You have destroyed healthcare. So, to me, what he did was terrible after we've all been fighting to get everybody vaccinated. And for him to say he's not going to mandate it, to me, is a wishy-washy premier. Wishy-washy.
Wishy-washy. Okay, Bonnie, thank you. No. Okay, very good. Okay. Where are we going here now? It is Steve in Canada. Steve.
Hey, Rob.
I'm good, Steve. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
My answer to that is yes. And I'm going to tell you really two quick anecdotes. One, my mother passed away last January with COVID. She passed away with double occlusion. You know, she had major heart issues. She knew she was going. And she is part of the statistics. But she caught it in the hospital, and they sent her home after a negative test, and she carried it home to my two sisters. And one of them ended up getting hospitalized, and luckily she recovered. And so my family's been hit by it. And my answer is still the same, because These people were good enough to go work in the hospitals, and we were lauding them. We were hanging signs out windows. We were singing out of balconies in New York when COVID hit. And now we're going to ostracize them. We're going to force them to give up their living. And the second thing is, I went to the QCH yesterday for an ankle assessment, right? Sore plantar fasciitis. I waited for an X-ray for quite a while. I had an appointment, and I waited for a good hour and a half, 2 hours when I had an appointment beyond the time, because they had one X-ray machine working, one. And it was one at a time. And then once that was done, it was, again, I went in for my assessment, and they tell me, well, surgery is an option. And you can see the orthopedic surgeon, maybe it'll be 18 months. Maybe it'll be 18 months, Rob. So if you're going to start to send doctors and nurses home because they're not vaccinated, and it's their choice.
You're worried about shortages and delays and procedures and stuff.
Be prepared. Every one of the people that has answered, no, they should not be allowed to work. Think about those delays. Think about your aging parents. Think about the conditions you're going to be in the next year and a half, 2 years when you answer that question, because you're going to get what you want. You're going to get it.
All right, Steve, thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. So, man, opinions all over the place today. It's really interesting. Stephen in Ottawa. Stephen.
Hey, Rob, great show.
Yep, thank you, sir. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
Yes, they should.
Okay, why do you say that, sir?
Well, I want to pick up on where Pat left off. He was a few callers ago talking about herd immunity. And I think that, politicians could say, well, the science is settled, but we have to remind ourselves this is an experimental vaccine. And these healthcare workers have been on the front lines for the past 18 months, and they've seen it. So, I mean,
they've seen what?
They've seen the pandemic up nice and close.
Yeah.
They see people that have died from. They've seen the contagion. They've seen all of it. And if they were so confident about this vaccine, I believe that they would take it. I mean, reasonable people do reasonable things, and I would say that maybe they're seeing things about the vaccine that they don't agree with. And the government shouldn't be mandating a vaccine that people should be forced to take medicine. I think it's unconstitutional.
We mandate it. We mandate all kinds of vaccines for all kinds of jobs, sir. We mandate vaccines for your children to go to school, sir. It's done all the time. It's not a new thing at all. This is not a new thing at all. But nevertheless, I thank you for your opinion. And at halftime, 6-5 at halftime. All right, pick it up right there when we come back after the news. Rob Snow Show, City News.
One for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, November 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now, 1 degree in Ottawa. It's -1 in Smiths Falls. And here's what's making news this hour. With a projected provincial deficit of over $34 billion in the current fiscal year, the province will set up its finances this afternoon with a full economic statement. The finance minister, Peter Bethlen-Falvey, says while the province has made great progress in the fight against COVID-19, the plan today will continue that fight. Investments in things like hospitals and long-term care homes, also transit and broadband internet. A tip from the public led police to open an investigation into a neighborhood drug dealer on St. Anne Avenue in Vanier. This week, police executed a search warrant and seized quantities of several drugs, including fentanyl, meth, and cocaine, as well as cash from an apartment along the 200 block of St. Anne. Two people, a 31-year-old man and a 28-year-old woman, now facing charges, including 7 each, of trafficking in drugs. Latest COVID-19 case numbers reported by the province shows 28 more cases in Ottawa today, 4 more in Eastern Ontario, 1 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 3 more cases in Renfrew. Altogether across Ontario, another 438 cases and 5 additional deaths from COVID-19. There are over 32,100 tests done for the case numbers, and 1.7 of them came back positive. City News Time, 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Pretty much right down the middle on this one today. There's not going to be a vaccine mandate for healthcare workers from the government of Ontario. Hospitals can have a vaccine mandate for healthcare workers if they want to, and a lot of them have. And a lot of them have put healthcare workers on leave, on unpaid leave. It is it's a small percentage of healthcare workers who have not been vaccinated. I mean, in a lot of the hospitals, it's pretty much 99% of employees have been vaccinated. My whole view on this is that if you don't want to get vaccinated, don't work in healthcare, okay? Find another line of work. Work from home, okay? Go on Pogie, whatever. It's just, to me, height of selfishness to be unvaccinated against COVID-19 and then go work in a hospital filled with sick and frail people with compromised immune systems. Be stubborn, fight for your freedom, all this stuff. Just don't work in healthcare. Now, maybe you think that's being simplistic, too black and white, whatever the case might be, so be it. I don't care. That's my opinion. What's yours? 750-1310, 750-1310. David in Mallorytown. David.
Hi, Rob. How's it going today?
It goes, sir. Always it goes.
I listen to you every day, and I agree with most of the things you say.
But not this one, I'm guessing.
Not this one.
No? Why is that? Why is that?
Well, I figure if I go to the hospital, I can catch COVID from a nurse that's vaccinated or unvaccinated. I'm vaccinated myself, so really what's the difference? You might as well have them there working.
Might as well have them there working. Okay, vaccinated or not. Doesn't really matter to you, David.
No, I'm protected by the double dose, so
right.
I'd rather have someone there to be able to look after me than not.
Right, but what about someone with a compromised immune system, or what about somebody with who can't get the vaccine because of some kind of medical condition and they're in the hospital? Wouldn't you want the healthcare worker to be vaccinated to protect the other person?
Yeah, but could they not catch COVID-19 from a vaccinated nurse as well?
Well, it's probably the chances are greatly reduced, David. Greatly reduced. I think we should be doing everything we can. I disagree. I know, David. If you and I were to sit down there at some pub in Mallorytown, we'd probably agree on just about everything. But I guess this is not one of those issues. Jason in Barrhaven.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great, sir. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
Well, yeah, I think so. I'll tell you why. I think Ford made exactly the right decision for the best case for Ontario's public health.
All right.
First of all, he left it up to the hospitals, and 90% of the hospitals are gonna impose such ban. They already have, right?
Well, it's about 70. It's closer to 70%.
So he's giving an opportunity to the hospitals, maybe in rural Ontario, where they have maybe I don't know what the numbers are. Nobody, but they have a significant amount of staff that are unvaccinated, and it could be devastating to that community. Number two, if the vaccine we know the vaccine works. It's working. We see it in the numbers. It's going down. But we also know that if you're vaccinated, you can still spread the virus. So what makes more sense? A vaccinated nurse, or what's safer? A vaccinated nurse who may or may not have COVID, or an unvaccinated nurse who's tested and definitely they don't have COVID.
Okay, well, but hold on now. You don't definitely know if they have COVID or not.
Well, you don't with a vaccinated nurse either.
No, but you're making it sound like the testing is 100% accurate 100% of the time, and that's not the case, Jason.
Well,
right?
It's not the case with the vaccine either.
Not the case. Not the case.
Jason. Okay, listen. In July, when the CDC changed the masking guidelines for fully vaccinated people, Fauci himself said that what the data suggested. This was in the Washington Post, USA Today, New York Times.
All right,
vaccinated people could spread the virus just as likely as unvaccinated.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So they have higher viral loads in their nose and their mouth.
Right.
That's a fact. That's out of the CDC.
Right. Yeah. But are people becoming sick? Sick that they end up in the hospital. So sick that they end up in ICU. Right.
Okay, but what do you do in, say, North Bay or Sudbury?
This is the struggle that we're having. This is the struggle, right?
You pointed out that the immunocompromised kid. Absolutely, that's right. But what about in rural Ontario? Just anybody going to the hospital, and there's no care.
Yeah, and it's not just rural Ontario. I thank you for your call. Okay, at the Ottawa Hospital, they're doing great. They have a payroll of 12,000. It's less than 200. I think the last number I saw was like 186 people or something like that. Health Sciences North. This was just a quick news scan for me this morning. Health Sciences North is in Sudbury. 266 employees not vaccinated. They have until November 6th, I believe, to get vaccinated. Windsor, Ontario, 170 in all. Unvaccinated staff, including three doctors who had privileges suspended. And they said it's going to be hard for them. The Windsor Star had a big story on this. It's going to be hard for them to find work anywhere. Doctors not getting vaccinated. 59 Kingston Health Sciences Center employees put on indefinite unpaid leave. London Health Sciences Center, 84 employees. Now, I mentioned places like Windsor, Sudbury, Kingston, London. The simple fact is, in any Ontario municipality now, it's quite likely that the hospital is the largest employer. You know, if you think 12,000 people work at the campuses of the Ottawa Hospital, outside of the government, who employs more? Maybe Shopify or something like that? How many people work in the Kingston Health Sciences Center, London Health Sciences Center, Windsor, the hospitals in Windsor, Health Sciences North and Sudbury? These are probably the largest employers in these communities. It's not a big number. Hamilton did have a big number, but I haven't seen an updated number in a while for Hamilton Health Sciences Center. Last number was about a month ago. It was 1,100 staff. 1,100 staff. But again, that was about a month ago. 10:39, right back to the phones. We have, do we have a free line? Yeah? Okay. Somebody's talking David's ear off there. Michael in Orleans. Michael.
How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Michael. Thank you. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
I actually wanted to call and say one thing on that matter. It's a brilliant move by the Ford government. It's a brilliant move because what it's done is it's taken the authoritarian process out of it, and it's given the power back to the facilities. It's like, you guys make the call. Mm-hmm. You guys decide on your own. But what's not going to happen is people are going to lose their jobs and say, well, it was because the government told us to do it. What's going to happen, and now you're going to have to go to the administrators and the administration and say, what is your choice for your specific facility? I think the move was great on Ford's part because of that. It kind of gives a little bit more accountability to each and every place, like I said. But as for the double vax,
so when it comes down to the administration, what should the administration do? Like if you were the CEO of a hospital making $500,000 a year, what would your decision be?
Well, the truth is each facility would be different. I mean, Rob, you're double vaxxed. I'm double vaxxed. And I caught COVID after being double vaxxed. I didn't know I had it because I had this altruistic virtue about me because I'm double vaxxed and therefore I can't get anyone sick. The truth is the science states that everyone can be carrying it. Everyone can be passing it on. So really, what are we talking about?
All right. You've got a workplace safety issue here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
You want to protect other staff. You want to protect the patients.
Mm-hmm.
You're the CEO of a hospital. You're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make the big call.
Yep.
Okay. What's your call? Show some leadership, Michael.
Well,
what's your call? I told you my position. If you're not vaccinated, go get another job. Go work at McDonald's. Oh, wait, you probably have to be vaccinated to work at McDonald's, actually.
Well, no. I mean, that's easier said than done for people to switch gears and just go into another line of work. My call would be we're going into the endemic phase of this pandemic, meaning the disease is going to become far more contagious and a lot less deadly. We have to just kind of open it up. And, yes, if you don't get double vaxxed, you're still allowed to work in my place. I usually agree with you, Rob, but on this one, we're going to be at other sides of the spectrum.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I'm losing it. I mean, the issue. On the issue. Because everything else, I lost it long ago. But here we are. It's 10:42 in the morning. We were doing a rapid poll, and it is, the question is, should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? And 9 people have said yes, and only 5 have said no. Only 5 people have said no to that. Ed in Ottawa. Ed.
Yes, Rob.
Ed.
Yes.
Are you going to build on this lead, or are you going to narrow the lead here?
I'm building it. I'm building it.
All right. Okay.
Rob, I just heard on your update news there that there's one case in Leeds Grenville. That one case is living beside me. A young lady, pregnant. She was in the Civic Hospital for 3 days. She's having a hard pregnancy. Anyways, the last day she was in there, that's when she got it from a nurse. Now, they tracked it right back to her. She was home in bed, but still, she got it from a nurse. And there's no excuse for it, Rob. Get your friggin' shots. And about laying them off, yes, lay them off. Don't take their license. Once they run out of pay, they're going to come back to work and get their vaccinations. And as far as Doug Ford goes, I'm a Ford guy, right through and through. As I told you the other day, I pee blue. Right. But he's not being a leader.
Not being a leader. He's failing to lead.
He's not being a leader. Make the decision. No, I can't go into... I'm a contractor. My men all have to be vaccinated to work on any City of Ottawa job, any NCC job, any government job. And a nurse of all people, or a doctor, or a cleaning lady should have to have the vaccine to work in a bloody hospital. There's no excuse. There is no excuse. Now, this young lady's pregnant and having a hard pregnancy. And God knows, it's just not fair to anybody. And you had a gentleman on there saying, well, he had to wait an hour and a half and everything else. Well, I would rather wait an hour and a half than have somebody die, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, or anybody. So, yes, it might take us a little longer waiting. It's been long enough anyways waiting. But another hour and a half isn't going to hurt anybody when it comes to catching COVID.
All right, Ed, thank you. Thank you, Ed. Thank you. All right, we'll be back. It'll be the final quarter. We might even do a 2-minute warning. 9-6 now. 9-6. We'll be right back. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? No vaccine mandate for healthcare workers from the Ford government, leaving it up to individual hospital administrations. I want your say on that. Lots of time can still fit in a lot of calls at 750-1310 here on City News.
I'm blessed to be married to someone who is a scientist and spent a lot of time following what was happening over in China ahead of time, so he did give us the heads up that this was coming. Not that we believed him right off the bat, but when it did happen very, very quickly, we were prepared. We had hand sanitizer and we were set up to not close our doors. So we locked the kitchen down at Wellington Street, but we left this kitchen open. We put in protocols immediately. We only allowed our very small crew of 4 or 5 people in at the time. No deliveries were allowed to come in or out of the building without, they just weren't allowed in and out of the building. So we met them at the loading dock and had very strict protocols in place right away. We had masks and hand sanitizer and the whole thing. So we're very lucky from that perspective, and we're able to, learn as we went, as far as doing small, individually packed caterings, the frozen soup program, food for the Ottawa mission. So we didn't have to close the kitchen and then learn how to reopen it. We just were able to modify and shift as we needed to. Because of our partnership with the Ottawa mission, we were able to very quickly help support them. They were able to send us some product and some supplies, so it wasn't a burden on our business, and we were able to supply the staffing and the packaging to help produce that when they needed it the most. And we produced about 1,400 meals a week to complement their meals, and we started our soup program right away. We realized very quickly that there was a need in the community to get together and all work together, not only to support local, but also just to support all the people that were suddenly in a position of, being locked down and not being able to get out. So by starting that soup program, our community, our clients got online and started making donations for the soups, and we were able to produce the soups and get them back out to people that needed it. We're right now currently making 150 liters of soup per week, but we've made, I would say, 5,000 or 6,000, easily since the pandemic. Probably more. I'd have to do the math, but lots. I think everybody in the city has to be very aware of how blessed we were to have great weather this summer and people were able to get out and about, and that's going to shift. So we do have to be much more aware of who our most vulnerable is, and I really think we have to work together as groups. There are so many organizations in the city that are doing something and contributing and working together, and I think it doesn't matter who, but see what you can do to just step up and help them, whatever it is, whether it's driving or delivering food, or someone has extra zucchini in their garden, or if they can afford to donate some money to any of these organizations. I just think we all have to work together. We're smarter and wiser than we were the first time.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital? Gathering reaction to the Ford government's decision to leave that decision up to the individual hospitals. Margot in Ottawa.
Yes, hi. I work at a long-term care.
Yeah.
And, I do believe people should have to be vaccinated. I was one of the first group to be vaccinated, and they talk about the waning of the vaccine. I haven't changed my lifestyle too much, but, of course, I'm out more and people are out more. And a nursing friend of mine 2 weeks ago got flattened, and I'm down this week, and I'm pretty sick. I'm going to do a COVID test on tomorrow.
Okay.
But, just see how easily things are transmitted. And I'll tell you, if I was an older person right now, it would be brutal to feel this sick.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm sorry to hear that, Margot. Yeah.
So anyways, that's just the thing. So I'm a bit worried as we're unmasking and we're coming up to time. I'm more cautious now myself because, as I said, I was the first group. So I'm waiting for a booster. My husband has had a booster, so... and because he is a bone marrow transplant person. So, in all this, we still need a lot of caution, and I still think people in healthcare should be vaccinated.
Thank you, Margot. Thank you for your call, 750-1310. About 10 minutes to take some calls here. Let's go to Rodney at 750-1310. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
No.
Nope.
And I'll give you...
You're always straight to the point, Rodney.
Let's get straight to the point.
Yep.
If you have COVID and you're really sick, where do you go?
I guess some people might go to the hospital. Some people might go to bed. I don't know.
Well, I'm going to think people that are really sick with COVID are going to go to the hospital.
Right, really sick with COVID. Yeah, they might end up in the ICU at the hospital.
Yeah. And then shouldn't the people working with them have safety protection? And then, what's next? Should a fireman go to a fire without proper clothing? Should a policeman go out on
a call,
right, without body armor type thing?
Well, yeah. Or handcuffs or whatever, right?
How many people from the hospital have to get sick with COVID that work at the hospital before an outbreak is declared at the hospital and they have to reduce procedures? And then, hey, that's...
I hear you, Rodney. You're making a lot of good points today, sir. Thanks, Rodney. Thank you. Bye. Yep. Okay. Still some time there. John in Hallville. John.
Yeah.
Hi, John.
I think health workers should still be allowed to work whether or not they are vaccinated.
Oh, really? Why do you say that, John? Why?
Well,
John? Why?
If you believe in freedom of choice for abortion, freedom of choice is control over your own body. It works both ways.
Yeah, but again, when it comes to mandatory vaccination, this is not new. This is not new. Mandatory vaccination for children to go to school. There's mandatory vaccination for children to go to school. There's mandatory vaccination for all kinds of other infectious diseases.
These Rob, are a new technology, untested.
Untested? How many billions of doses have been administered?
It is 8 to 10 years to bring a vaccine to market, and it is never brought to market during the pandemic. Now, 90% of the people in Ontario almost have had one dose, 85% 2 doses. That will be 90% by the time their waiting period comes up. So if 90% of the nurses are vaccinated and 90% of the patients are vaccinated, we've reached herd immunity.
It's good enough. It's good enough. All right, John. Thank you, John. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Yep. Fair enough. I knew I wasn't going to agree with most people today. It's 10-7 here now. Ed in Ottawa. Ed.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning, Ed. Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
No, they shouldn't.
Okay.
And if they go to work sick and they work in a large department and they go around talking to everybody in the department, then that whole department has to shut down because they don't know who's sick and who's not sick because he's been spreading it through the whole department. So if you're talking about a nursing, like a ward, that could shut down a whole OR.
Wow.
And all the OR nurses could have to stay off for 14 days. And then, they're really stuck because it could slow down operations because of the mandatory 14-day isolation.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Ed, thank you. Thank you for your opinion, sir. Yep. Where are we going here? We got a couple there. Bill, Ottawa. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Rob. I agree that they shouldn't be allowed to work in a hospital or anywhere else. The whole idea is to get past this COVID.
Yes.
And if they're not willing to participate in doing that, then they shouldn't be there because if they become patients in the hospital, they'll stop working anyway. And spreading it to other people, that's the danger. And if they're not willing to guard against that, then they really shouldn't be there.
All right, Bill, thank you for having your say. 750-1310. About 4 minutes left here. Let's see how we do. Joan in Ottawa. Joan.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Joan.
Rob, I'll be very brief, brief, because you've had a lot of, the world has had a lot of this conversation about V19. Okay, I concur with with Premier Ford. If the healthcare personnel don't wish to get vaccinated, okay with me, but there's a but here.
Okay.
With choice, there is also responsibility. That word responsibility, and that means then they have the responsibility as they won't have the passport, then they have the responsibility not to try to edge their way unsolicited into a nightclub, a venue, a restaurant. Then they cannot expect to edge their way into a restaurant or similar venue. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Jennifer in Brockville. Jennifer.
Morning, Rob.
Morning.
Just putting in my 2 cents
Sure.
here. I guess I do believe that everybody should be vaccinated against the virus. However, I'm just playing devil's advocate here for a minute. A lot of the times when people say you work in the healthcare industry, that doesn't always mean you're bedside with a patient. I 100% believe nurses, doctors, anybody that's bedside with a patient should be vaccinated. However, also in hospitals, there's so much more to healthcare work. There's, X-ray booking clerks, there's registration clerks, there's business office clerks, there's admitting clerks.
What about those people?
Well, they're not bedside. They're not going to infect anybody when they're going to an office by themselves to, admit patients. They don't go and see the patient. So if it really came down to them losing their job, I don't think that they should. I think that, they're not infecting anybody.
All right. You're kind of 50-50. Patient-facing workers, yes, but...
100%. 100%.
Okay. I'll put you down. You're like one
With
half.
Patients,
You're half and half. You're half and half.
If you're physically seeing a patient, then you need to be vaccinated.
All right. Gotcha, Jennifer. Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Rob.
Thank you. Yeah.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
You too. Susan up next. Susan, Orleans. Good morning, Susan.
Yes, good morning.
Should an unvaccinated healthcare worker be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital?
In this case, especially with the pandemic, I am a former healthcare worker who worked in ICU, but is presently off on long term. But I worked there a very long time, and nurses already have a number of vaccinations before they're allowed to work. And yes, they should. And Ottawa has the luxury of a lot of people having both doses. However, it doesn't take much to have someone who is positive and it will spread. And even the vaccinated people, yes, they may be considered carriers, but they won't carry the same heavy viral load. And if people are not vaccinated, then when they're working, no matter where they're working in the hospital, for instance, should wear full protection, not only for those they are serving, but also to protect themselves. And that would require a surgical mask, a face shield, and a gown. And anyone without the vaccination then should wear the physical barriers.
All right. I got to go, Susan. Thank you. Thank you, because that's our time. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everyone. I think I could probably go another hour or two on that one. Well, the folks on my side came through in the end, and it was a major comeback victory. Final score at the end of the hour on this one, because I'm putting Jennifer as half and half. It's 11.5 for the no's. They should not be allowed to work in an Ontario hospital, to 10.5. 11.5 to 10.5. Can you imagine? One call. That's why you got to call. Have your say. All right, we'll do that again tomorrow when it's the Friday Free-for-All Talkback Hour. That should be wild. This is City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Thursday, November 4th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, it's 1 degree, and in Smiths Falls, -1. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A coalition of business groups reviewing or renewing their push to have the federal government drop rules that would require travelers coming to or returning to Canada to have a recent negative COVID test. City News Parliament Hill reporter Cormac McSweeney with more.
At midnight on Monday, the U.S. will start allowing fully vaccinated travelers to once again cross the border for leisure. But for Canadians, if you want to return to our country, you need to have a negative COVID test. That also applies to any traveler who wants to enter our country. Paramedic with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce says since travelers have to be fully vaxxed, they will be low risk and the testing requirement is not needed. He adds, this is also causing a financial strain for Canadian businesses and families.
Travel and tourism industry is bracing for cancellations. And Canadian families are looking to either cancel or delay long-awaited winter trips and family visits once again.
The Trudeau government has been arguing that the rules should stay in place for the time being, given fully vaccinated people can still transmit the disease, which is still a risk, especially for the millions of children who still can't get vaccinated. However, the feds have left the door open to changing those rules in the future. Cormac McSweeney, Parliament Hill.
Now, the latest COVID-19 numbers reported by the province show 28 new cases in Ottawa, 4 in Eastern Ontario, 1 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark, and 3 in Renfrew. More coming up on a possible COVID exposure. This at a Halloween bar celebration. City News Time, 11:03. And a traffic note this hour. We've been telling you the Pinecrest off-ramp from the 417 is closed to all vehicles except buses. The OPP, though, says drivers are ignoring the closed sign and driving through. That endangers lives of construction workers. Now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
Well, it's yet another cool morning for us. The wind is very light, but it still feels colder than the current temperature indicates. The high today, just 6 degrees. Lots of sunshine, though. Tonight, mainly clear, -4. And tomorrow, sun and cloud milder up to 9 degrees. For today, the high, 6.
And right now, -1 in Ottawa, +1 in Ottawa, -1 in Smiths Falls. Ottawa Public Health investigating a possible COVID exposure over Halloween. 2 people testing positive for COVID after they attended the Back from the Dead Halloween party at Mavericks last Saturday. Now, if you were at that Rideau Street bar last Saturday night between 9 and 2 Sunday morning, you may have been exposed. If you have COVID symptoms, you're being told to self-isolate and book a test. City of Ottawa moving forward with plans for free transit in December as a make-good for the lack of Confederation line for nearly 2 months now. City News reporter Chris Curries tells us it won't be free for everyone.
One group still paying for transit in December is students at the University of Ottawa who aren't able to opt out of the UPass program this late in the semester. The president of the Students' Union tells City News it's been a struggle for students looking just to get to class.
The mayor seems making it free because you can escape some responsibility or backlash with the RT. I'm not too sure what the political implications are. But the reality is students are now going to be paying for free transit.
Tim Gulliver adds that R1 buses are no real substitute to a station right on campus, since the buses are often late, crowded, or canceled, and he expects the lack of service to be an even bigger issue once final exams get underway. Chris Curries, City News.
And I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 1011 FM
and 1310 AM.
It's a great pleasure to welcome to the Rob Snow Show this morning the Chief Paramedic and Director of Emergency Services for Renfrew County, Mike Nolan. Good morning, Mr. Nolan.
Hi, good morning.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you, sir. There have been some accounts that Renfrew paramedics are frequently called into Ottawa because of a shortage of paramedics in Ottawa. Renfrew County paramedics are called into Ottawa to pick up Ottawa patients and take them to Ottawa hospitals. How frequently does this happen?
Well, it certainly does happen, Robin. And, if we compare it to the past few years, it has significantly decreased over the past 6 months. In terms of how often it happens, in some cases it's once a week. In some cases it's 2 or 3 times a day. And it's often correlated directly to the number of paramedic units that are available in the City of Ottawa for the City of Ottawa. But when their numbers dwindle for a number of different reasons, if the closest available unit happens to be in Renfrew County, then they'll be asking for our help in those circumstances.
Okay. And where is that decision made to call upon paramedics from Renfrew County to come into Ottawa? Who makes that call?
So it's a provincial rule that regardless of where you are in Ontario and you've called 911, the closest paramedic unit will go. And I think that makes sense. It makes sense in principle that you don't want to have to worry about municipal boundaries or, what patches on someone's shoulder. You want the closest available help.
Of course.
Where it doesn't make sense is that it becomes a knee-jerk reaction to send the closest unit, even though we know it may never, ever become the paramedic unit that helps you in your time of need.
Okay. Now, I remember back in 2018, this was a very hot issue. It was very frustrating for Renfrew County. So much so that I remember the warden of Renfrew County sent a letter to Mayor Watson basically saying we can't subsidize the paramedic service in Ottawa anymore. But that was 2018. You do say the situation has improved since then. Is that what you're saying?
It has improved. It has, absolutely. And, Chief Poirier, who's the new paramedic chief in Ottawa, has made great strides to better serve the rural populations within Ottawa, and that has kind of a knock-on effect to their neighbors, whether that be Prescott Russell, Renfrew County, Lanark, and so on. So where they're either more willing or better able to take care of their outer ring, if you will, of deployment, that takes the pressure off of us. Now, we've been seeing an increase over the last little while because, there's been significant issues related to offload delay or where paramedics aren't able to transfer care from their stretcher to a hospital bed because of challenges within the hospital system. And, when that happens, and, very recently we had a circumstance where a Renfrew paramedic unit, while in Renfrew County, was asked to respond 911 lights and sirens to Hunt Club, for example.
Wow.
That's frustrating, obviously from the patient's perspective, because that means that Ottawa is at what they call level 0. And, I'm very...
Like, it's one thing to go to Dunrobin, it's another to go all the way down to Hunt Club or something, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. If Dunrobin's a great example, Fitzroy Harbor, Constance Bay, we see that really as an extension of our community because we know that we may be closest and we're most likely to get there and be able to either initiate care for that person, transfer care to the Ottawa paramedics. But when we hear Code 4 from Arm Prior to the Rideau Center, the challenge for us is that we're now tying up that resource that can't be redirected to an emergency call either in Renfrew County or West Carleton. And there's certainly a point of ridiculousness there where we need to stop distracting one another in terms of those calls. And I think that Chief Poirier is making great strides in doing that, but we need to look at this provincial policy and say, let's put some limits on that.
Okay. So it's more of a provincial policy problem than it is right now a resources problem here in our city. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Nolan?
No, I would say that the resources problem in the city is very real, as is the resources problem in Renfrew County and really across the province right now because we're all getting tied up in offload delay. The challenge from a provincial policy perspective is that it's a blanket approach in principle that makes sense, and we need to work with our partners at the City of Ottawa as well as the province to apply that policy with discretion so that you're not asking paramedics to drive from Cornwall to Barrhaven knowing full well that you're going to have a crew be released from offload delay at the Queens or Carleton, for example, in the next few minutes.
I see. Okay, I see. Yesterday was draft budget day here in the city of Ottawa, and as part of that budget, the city has a plan in its budget, $1.3 million to hire 14 paramedics and the ambulances to go with them. So what do you think of that? That'll help, I suppose.
Yeah, every little bit helps. We've seen a lot of innovation through COVID. We've seen paramedics doing vaccination, doing swabbing, significant increases from the province in funding community paramedics, which can also respond to emergency calls. And every little bit helps. 14 paramedics really doesn't seem like a lot. $1 million does. But we know that where we've got challenges in the system, like offload delay, like increased call volume overall. And I think one thing that we're seeing as paramedic chiefs is patients are also quite a bit sicker on average than they used to be. Oh, okay. And whether that's a dynamic of COVID or whether that's just related to the age of our population continuing to advance, there are pressures that not only do we need to keep up to, but we need to get ahead of if we're going to maintain the quality of care that the paramedics provide every day.
Okay, so this offload delay, I've been hearing about this for years. So let's give me a practical example of how this works. Let's say one of your teams gets a call. You go pick up a patient in Dunrob and you have to bring them to Queensway Carleton, just as an example. How long is that team at a commission before they get back to Renfrew, for example, typically? Something like that.
Yeah, it's a great... Well, let's start with what should happen. And I think what should happen is that, the Queens or Carleton or, insert any hospital here should have the resources to be able to receive the report and transfer the care of that patient safely within 20 minutes. That's sort of the gold standard of the benchmark that we all look to as to what it should take from the time the paramedics roll in the door, are able to identify the triage level, provide a report, and then actually physically move the patient across to the care of the hospital staff, get their stretcher back in order, and then get back out the door for that next 911 call.
20 minutes. Well, 20 minutes. 20 minutes in and out. Okay, all right.
20 minutes in and out is really what we all shoot for. The reality is, and not to call out any individual hospital, because it's pretty much across the board. We're seeing hours of offload delay. And I know in the city this week, there was one example of 11 hours for one patient to be offloaded. And that took 2 paramedic crew changes to allow that to occur.
11 hours?
11 hours. And really, that's unacceptable. You can argue 2 minutes this way, 2 minutes that way. But when you're into almost an entire paramedic shift, and, while we're not seeing that extreme in Renfrew County, we certainly experience significant offload delays when we go into hospitals in the city of Ottawa because they have certainly their own challenges. There are also opportunities there. They have offload nurses and they have, much greater capacity. But the problem is that the emergency department becomes the bottleneck of the entire hospital. And until patients can flow through that hospital, things just keep getting backed up and backed up. The problem for us, Rob, obviously, is that, that's 11 hours of paramedics that were not available to respond to 911 calls in the community. And really, that's the injustice to me is, you've got them in a safe environment. We'd like to see that transfer of care occur almost immediately. And I believe the hospitals and their CAOs are on board with that. Now it's a matter of finding solutions to be able to transfer that care safely, get those paramedics back out on the road and back in your living rooms and in workplaces and highways where they belong so that they can provide the expert care that they're intended to when there is no other option.
Okay. With the offloading issues, do you have the same thing in Valley hospitals, the same sorts of challenges at the hospital in Renfrew or Arnprior or Pembroke or whatever the case might be, or Barry's Bay?
Yeah, so in the last 3 to 6 months, really it's the first time we've ever seen delays in offloading our patients. Certainly there have been exceptions of here or there when, if we have a large motor vehicle collision, we bring in 4 or 5 patients at a time. Obviously, the system's going to get choked up. But we've been able to work really collaboratively with our hospital partners in Renfrew County to the point where we now have paramedics going in and working in the hospital to relieve our own crews. And we've created our own waiting room, if you will, that the hospital has been excellent at working with us on. So paramedics working in the hospital to offload ambulance paramedic crews is one of the solutions that we've put in place over the last few weeks. And the hospitals have been very good. When they hit a certain threshold where they're getting backed up, they give us a call. And we have paramedics now going in and working in the emergency department.
Okay. Well, look, thank you so much for shedding some light and giving us some more information. It's a lot better than, learning what you can about it from some tweets.
Yeah. No, and Rob, I appreciate you bringing light to the issue. It's an important conversation because, like an insurance policy, you don't think about it until you need it.
Yeah.
And, the paramedics are out there every day, grinding it out and providing amazing patient care. And really, we want them in the community. And we see that commitment from our hospital partners as well, but we need to come up with some innovative solutions as COVID is forced us to do in many ways, and make sure that when you call 911, you can rely upon not only a timely but an expert response from paramedics.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Nolan. All the best to you and your teams.
Great. Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye. Yeah, Chief Paramedic, Director, Emergency Services, Renfrew County. Not unusual to see them in Ottawa, apparently. That's Mike Nolan. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our 2nd generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online. And the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
So, if you heard my Snow and 60 commentary either here on City News today or over on Shea 106 this morning, it was about e-scooters, and it was basically a follow-up to the op-ed that was in the Ottawa Citizen this week from Ottawa City Councillor Matthew Fleury, who outlined how it has exposed some enforcement gaps that basically by law police are powerless to do much about these these wayward scooters. The wayward scooters that are kind of left all over the place in the city of Ottawa. And look, there's a pilot project, and it's winding down. And Councillor Fleury says that some issues need to be addressed before these e-scooters become a permanent fixture on the roads of the capital city. So I'm pleased to welcome here today Isaac Ransom, Head of Government Relations for Canada with Neuron Mobility. Good morning.
Hey, Rob. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's a great pleasure, sir. Tell us about Neuron Mobility and your involvement in the e-scooter rollout here in Ottawa, sir.
Yeah, so we've been having a great time here in Ottawa this year. As you know, as you just mentioned, it's a pilot program that the city has been running. We are one of 3 operators that's currently present in the city of Ottawa. And for those that aren't familiar with Neuron, we are a safety-first e-scooter company that operates in 4 markets across Canada that include Calgary, Vernon, and Red Deer. And we've been having a really interesting season in terms of not only seeing company growth, but uptake. And in Ottawa alone this year, we've seen over 240,000 kilometers of rides.
Okay.
And we have...
with how many devices, sir, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, sure. So right now we've got about 400 devices on the streets in Ottawa. We're kind of winding down for the season. But at our peak this season, the city of Ottawa had allowed us to have up to 470 devices on the streets of Ottawa this year. And we've been slowly reducing that as the season starts to wind down and we start to approach the winter months.
Okay. How would I know I'm riding a Neuron Mobility e-scooter and not one of your competitors?
I think it's pretty easy. We're no secret. We're the bright orange e-scooters that you see on the streets everywhere.
Okay.
We're pretty hard to miss.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen us out and about and people riding and enjoying themselves going from point A to point B in the city of Ottawa. So very easy to identify. And in addition to that, we've got a lot of great features that tell you about the Neuron e-scooter while you're traveling. So if you've never encountered one before, our e-scooter actually talks to you. So when you first interact with it, it will tell you you're approaching a Neuron e-scooter. It will tell you how to contact us. It'll tell you how to download the Neuron app. There's a unique identifier on it. If you've got an issue, a QR code, you don't even need the app to learn more about us. So there's a lot of great ways that you can learn about our company and learn about the service that we're providing in the city of Ottawa.
Okay. My producer tells me that your e-scooter product, it comes with its own helmet. Is that's true? Yeah?
It does, yeah.
God bless you, sir. You know what? It freaks me out to see people on e-scooters and they're not wearing helmets. I can't believe that people do that, but they're doing it. They're right in the middle of traffic without a helmet on. At least you're providing them a helmet. They don't have to wear it, but at least you're giving them the option. So.
We go to great lengths to encourage helmet use. We actually just wrapped up Helmet Safety Week across Canada. We were very present in Ottawa along Bank Street and near City Hall during our Helmet Safety Week at the end of September. Not only do all our scooters come with an e-scooter helmet, which is in the world's first helmet safety lock. We developed this in feedback that we got from the city of Brisbane, one of the major cities that we operate in Australia. So we developed this specifically in response to the city, very much like we've been developing new technology that we're rolling out across the city of Ottawa now. And that has to do with our precision geofencing, which you may have heard about, specifically around the fact that we will now be able to basically track in real time our e-scooters within 10 centimeters, which is 50 times more accurate than the industry average.
All right.
Yeah.
10 centimeters. Okay. Geo-tracking. Okay. Very interesting. Yeah. Now, look, let's get right to the heart of the matter here.
Sure.
What the councillor is frustrated about, and what a lot of people in Ottawa are frustrated about, because that's why they're calling their councillor, is, first of all, people not following the rules of the road, riding them where they're not supposed to be riding them, primarily sidewalk-related complaints, and then leaving them where they shouldn't be leaving them, because, obviously this causes issues, especially for people with mobility issues in the city of Ottawa. It's a safety concern.
Sure.
So what, as a good corporate citizen in the city of Ottawa here, which is, I'm sure, looking to expand on this pilot program, and your firm would like to be part of it, what can you do about that?
Sure. So there's a number of things that we do already. One of them is that we have a robust team which is actually patrolling the streets. You may have seen them around in bright orange T-shirts and vests that do something we call rebalancing. And this is the constant activity of making sure that e-scooters that have maybe toppled over or, the vast majority of our users, I will say, adhere to the rules of the road and parking compliance. But in the instance where maybe it's misunderstood or they're not aware of the parking rule for that area, our team will go out and correct that.
Okay.
And so once notified, we are out there within an hour to fix that issue. We don't pretend to be perfect, but we are very, very good.
But do you have the power, because this is an app, to suspend accounts, for example? Can you suspend somebody from using your service? Yeah. And how would you do that? How would you be able to do that?
So there's a couple of ways that we go about this, but our right from the day that you sign up for Neuron and you use our app, essentially what happens is we go through some education modules with you, which will inform you of the rules in the city of Ottawa.
Okay.
They encourage you of safe riding practices, such as wearing helmet, as you noted, and why that's important, and the rules as they pertain to sidewalks, what roads you can ride on, and how to operate the device, for example, not to have two people on it, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So people go through that riding module, they start off, and then they get notifications every time they come onto the app that remind them around safe riding. And when we become aware of an issue, so our street patrollers that are out there may identify an issue, we can first gently remind a rider through the unique identifier that you can see on the front and back of every e-scooter that, look, you may not have been riding safely. You may not have parked your e-scooter safely or in the correct location. We'd really like you to come back and reevaluate how you're operating our device. And so we will do gentle reminders. If they're repeat offenders, yes, we can take further actions like you've suggested. But we really prefer to do it through education. So you'll see our pop-ups around the city for our Scoot Safe events where we educate riders and credit them for doing safe riding. When people end their ride, we give them a credit for parking correctly. We've got a number of campaigns that we normally run through push notifications and emails to remind riders. And, I personally go out on the street in Ottawa and educate riders myself because I think it's just that important to remind people how safe it is to be riding a Neuron e-scooter properly. And that's really at the heart of everything we do in our company. We have the wider deck, the larger wheels. We've got the bright orange e-scooter, large illuminating lights, front and back brakes. We have all these safety features built in. So when we hear these reports, we want to be as reactive as we can to address them. And then with our stakeholders like those in the sight loss community, we work very closely with them. So you'll see on our e-scooters that we've rolled out Braille onto all of our e-scooters this year. We also have an AODA compliant QR code, which is on the top, so that you can identify.
Do you have a horn or a bell or anything like that on the device? Or
Yeah, we've got an electric bell that's on every device. And we also are trialing, we're the only e-scooter company right now in the city of Ottawa to be trialing a noise emittance to alert pedestrians when an e-scooter is approaching.
Look, we're pretty much out of time here, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But look, you've been very informative this morning. I really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate having me on. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Anytime, yep. Okay, thank you. Isaac Ransom, Head of Government Relations for Canada, Neuron Mobility, one of the e-scooter providers here in the city of Ottawa. Coming up next, some city councillors on yesterday's draft budget. This is City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Thursday, the 4th of November. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, partly cloudy and 3 degrees. 3 degrees in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news this hour. Business and travel groups don't think travelers should have to be tested for COVID-19 before coming back into the country. The groups issued their call this morning at an event downtown. The Trudeau government has argued the rules need to stay in place because fully vaccinated people can still transmit COVID-19, which is still a risk, especially for millions of children too young to be vaccinated yet. A possible COVID exposure at a Halloween party. Ottawa Public Health says 2 people contagious with the virus attended the Back from the Dead Halloween party at Mavericks last Saturday. If you were also there, you may have been exposed to the virus. If you have COVID symptoms, you're being told by Public Health to self-isolate and book a test. Hawkesbury OPP looking for your help to solve a child luring case. A man in his mid-30s was trying to lure 2 10-year-old girls Tuesday morning. A passerby intervened, telling the girls to run away. They did. OPP says it wants to speak with those 2 girls and anyone else who witnessed the incident. The westbound 417 off-ramp to Pinecrest has been closed for a few days now for construction, but apparently some of us think that just doesn't apply to us. OPP say some drivers are ignoring the closure signs and the cones driving through the construction zone. Only buses are allowed on that westbound ramp to Pinecrest. City News Time 11:34. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Okay, lots to discuss. Many people to speak with. 3 city councillors on the line. What a treat. Theresa Kavanagh is the city councillor for Bay Ward. Good morning, Councillor Kavanagh.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Nice to hear from you. And Councillor Brockington from River Ward. Councillor Riley Brockington, good morning.
Hi, Rob. How are you today?
I'm good, sir. Thank you. And Councillor Tim Tierney from Beacon Hill-Cyrville Ward. Good morning, Councillor Tierney.
Good morning, Robert. Thanks for having me on today.
Great pleasure. And it's draft budget time. Question number 1, and I'm going to throw this to Councillor Brockington because he's only here for one segment because he has another meeting to go to, but I appreciate the time. Councillor, for many years, the mayor and council have used the annual inflation rate as a benchmark for property tax increases. The latest reading for inflation across Canada was 4.4%. The annual inflation rate for the city of Ottawa, though, was the highest of any major city in the country at 5.3%. The property tax increase is targeted at 3%. In other words, well below the rate of inflation for the draft budget. What do you think of it? What do you think of that as a target below the rate of inflation? What do you think?
The tax rate needs to be reasonable. Most of our budget is tied to our collective agreements with our employees. They're not getting paid a 4 or 5% increase. They have multi-year contracts, which are in basically the 2% range, which is beneficial at this point. So no, My taxpayers can't afford a 4, 5, 6% tax increase. I know there are challenges, particularly in the construction industry, but budgets need to be reasonable. You need to prioritize the needs of the city and present that budget to the people. So I think up to 3% is definitely the limit we should be looking for.
3% the limit? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
and prioritize the pressures.
Okay. Councillor Kavanagh, with inflation in the city at 5.3%, 4.4% across the country, what do you think of a property tax increase that's below that? 3%.
Well, it just means we're going to be very tight because there's some obvious things like the price of gas for vehicles. We don't have electric vehicles everywhere yet. There's a lot of pressures that are going to be put on the price of construction. We all know the pressures out there, and so it's going to mean that something is going to be tight and cut, and that's going to be really hard. It'll be harder on services that we provide.
You think that it will result in cuts to services, Councillor?
I think it'll be reductions. I think
reductions,
so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so, because if we're trying to do the same thing with higher costs, that's obviously problematic. I mean, it's just math. So we'll see pressures. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. Councillor Tierney, same question, sir. On 3%, which is below the current rate of inflation, what do you think of that as a target for a property tax increase?
Yeah, Rob, it's no secret. The mayor campaigned on 3%. It's a known quantity. I remember in 2010, the previous council, zero means zero, and how'd that turn out? 3 4.9s in a row. People like predictability. I think it's critical. Like Riley and Theresa say, there's only so much people can afford to pay. I think we're right in that sweet spot. And I do want to highlight two things. First of all, we were very fortunate, as bad as COVID is, to have an influx of money for a whole series of projects that we would have had to pay for out of the general coffers at one point. But, the feds have ponied up, the province have ponied up. We see construction and renovations of community centers and parks and all those great things. So we're lucky from that perspective.
Right.
My biggest fear is now the MPAC assessment, the Municipal Property Association Corporation assessment that the province does on where desirable communities are within your city and what that could look like as far as an impact goes on the market rate of your home. That is something I think we all have to prepare for next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your council colleague here, Councillor Kavanagh, says there might be cuts. If it's 3%, because the money will be tight. What do you think of that? Should taxpayers prepare for cuts, Councillor Tierney?
Well, I think there's always decisions to be made on what council as a whole wishes to invest in. For example, this budget that has come out, I've heard from a lot of constituents with a 3% tax increase, one's dedicated to infrastructure and stuff like that, but people want to see roads resurfaced. I'm getting a lot of that. And I'm glad to see a 50% increase on that. But at the same time, there's a balancing act. We want to do stuff in the way of active transportation, and there's a 25% increase on that as well. But it's picking what you want as a city. Will we have super big investments in things that we can't afford right now? Probably not.
Right.
But that's the decision we make by not going with a 5, 6, 7, 8%.
Councillor Brockington, I want to pick up on what Councillor Kavanagh said, that money might be tight and perhaps decisions will have to be made in cuts.
Yeah, Rob, I want to just warn us or remind us, I don't expect inflation to be out of control for many years in the future. I do think that this is short-term in nature. If you look at sort of the prudency of the Bank of Canada, they've kept inflation in check for literally decades. And I don't see this as a long-term problem. So we'll probably have inflationary pressures for a couple of years in Ottawa, and I do expect some stability. And we have to get through that. You have to prioritize the issues in this city and keep taxes at a reasonable level. And I'm not going to vote for taxes at levels that are not acceptable to my residents. So 3% is reasonable. We're putting significant money into infrastructure, which continues to be a pressure. We can always do more, but you have to be realistic.
Okay, let's talk about the transit budget, which appears to be made of a lot of hopes and prayers here. OC Transpo is asking for a $21 million increase in its budget. The net operating budget is $372 million, but it is based on a fantastical prediction that ridership will reach 82% to pre-pandemic levels by the end of next year. Good luck with that. It's not going to happen. You all know it. It's not going to happen. You know it's not going to happen. And yet you're budgeting, pretending that it's going to happen. Okay? Why even entertain this sort of budget process when it comes to our public transit system? Councillor Brockington, it's time for a reality check, is it not?
Yeah, this is probably going to be the most contentious budget we debate over the next 5 or 6 weeks. The budget in 2021 had a 70% ridership level predicted. We got half that. I questioned that then. 82% ridership on average is being predicted in 2022 with 100% capacity by the end of the year. It's not realistic. We need concrete data on the two major cohorts that use transit, federal public servants and post-secondary students. We need to see what OC Transpo is using for 2022, the modeling, people coming back to work. I'm not hearing from any department.
I mean, I interviewed the new president of the Treasury Board last week, Mona Fortier. Okay, she has no idea. She's brand new in the job, right? Okay, so she's the minister in charge of this file. She has no idea when people are coming back to work.
I have strong reservations with the ridership revenue data that's estimated in the budget. The devil will be in the details when we meet and go through the budgets, but I can't approve budgets that are dreams and not based in reality. Okay. We need concrete data, and we need estimates that are really accurate and not, like I said, out there in the atmosphere.
Councillor Kavanagh on the transit budget here.
I was asking questions yesterday about this because we had a special transit commission meeting to present the budget, and I asked about how we're basing this in terms of where we predict most of our revenue from, and it's the monthly passes. Well, I don't see people buying monthly passes in the future. I think it's more than just the pandemic. It's a culture change. I think people are going to choose to be at home more. So why would they buy a monthly pass that is based on 5 days a week, every day, going to work? I think that we have to anticipate that. And even though we don't have the official word from the government, we can see it coming. This is a town where a lot of people work in offices, and they've had to work at home. And there may be some hybrid. I think there definitely will be hybrids. And I think that that's what we should look at. So we have to have that flexibility. We have to run an entire system. There's no question. We did it during the pandemic, and a lot of people complained about the empty buses, but the people that were using them were frontline workers, and they needed that service. We know we have to have a full service, but to rely on the revenue is obviously problematic. It means that we're anticipating it to be back to what was normal, and I think there's going to be a new normal, and we have to look at that.
But how do you run a quote-unquote full service if everyone knows that ridership is not going to be anywhere near full? Where does the money come from? Where does the money come from?
Well, a year ago, I put in a motion that we work with the federal government, and FCM is on board with this, that we look at funding for operational. It's not just for capital, but for operational. Because if you want climate change, you want to get people out of cars, if you want people to use this massive system that we're building, the new one, you've got to have it so that they're wanting to go. And the fare increase doesn't help, by the way. It's another.
Well, I have questions about that, Councillor Kavanagh, but I should hear from Councillor Tierney here because we're running a little tight on time. Okay. Councillor Tierney, the budget is based on a ridership level of 82%. To call that optimistic doesn't do it justice. So how does that frame your thinking about the budget for public transit?
Like Riley and Theresa say, I think that's going to be the hot topic when we can actually dive into those questions. Obviously, We have a good working relationship with our federal partners, and if they're, like Pat Scrimsher said, he had to set some level. I mean, should he have said 50? Should he have said 90? Their best intel, they came up with 82%. There has been some changes, I will point out, that I'm not super happy about, but had to be done. The 200 series buses, which were primarily government worker buses that would head to feeder points or transit nodes, we turned all those off because they were running around empty. When will they ever come back online is one of my questions, because I get that question asked a lot in my community. Riley and I have also felt, I don't know why it's our buses that keep getting canceled, but we felt that pinch as well. So, there's a lot of questions surrounding these numbers. Will we have enough people and buses to be able to fulfill this? I do have many questions. I think 82 might be a little optimistic, but we will see when we can actually ask the actual questions at the table.
Okay, look, when we come back, we're going to, and thank you, Councillor Brockington. I know you have to run, but it was good to hear from you today.
Thank you,
when
Rob.
we come back, I want to talk about the police budget. 2.9% is the ask. And there are critics who say it's not a progressive budget. When the road budget goes up 56%, but there's just $17 million for more affordable housing, it's not a progressive budget, and I want to know how you respond to that criticism. When we return, draft budget reaction from city councillors here on City News.
We just took over this business about a few weeks prior to the pandemic, but we've been loving the community, the people, very friendly, but it's been very difficult starting up a new business, just the time that we did, but I'm sure it's the same everywhere. We did take a broken business, which doesn't help us, but we thought we believe in what we do. We're very passionate about food, and we just really wanted to share the Iraqi culture through our food. All our recipes are homemade, so this is very unique. Usually you hear restaurants, shops, it's all frozen food or prepared food. So nothing here is prepared, everything is homemade. We get our meat and produce from a local farm. So supporting local is the way to go. We are supporting all the way. And our meat are actually marinated the day of, so it's as fresh as can be. Quality ingredients and everything is made from scratch. I get a lot of people when they come in, they say it tastes like Middle Eastern, like back home. So for you to have been to Iraq and have the food there, you can really compare and see the similarity. We do like to focus on healthy. So our recipes, not only the homemade, again, everything is from scratch, but we have from combos and to small sandwiches. One of our favorites and very popular is the chicken salad and the beef salad. So now you're getting all the protein and all these amazing ingredients that we all need. During this time, I find a lot of people are sitting at home and not enough movement. So to come here and get something healthy other than go elsewhere and just put, what's not so good for our bodies, makes a huge difference. So we have shawarma sandwiches, combos. I mean, if you're looking for a meal to feed your family, I would highly recommend the family platter. It comes literally with everything, with potatoes, with rice, with chicken, with beef, and we don't charge extra for mix. I know a lot of places do. Here we just add everything to your platter. And lots of healthy choices for sure. We're very passionate about food, and for our small family business, it's been good. Like I said, it's a little struggle, but we are not a chained restaurant.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
And then there were two. Once again, talking about the draft city budget with Bay Ward Councillor Theresa Kavanagh and Beacon Hill-Cyrville Ward Councillor Tim Tierney. Councillor Kavanagh, as councillors, you have limited power over the, let's face it, over the budget for the Ottawa Police, but you know there have been calls to freeze or even cut the budget for the Ottawa Police, the so-called defund the police movement. The police service has the ask. It's a $14 million increase, 2.9%. What do you think about the request from the Ottawa Police Service for an increase in the budget?
Well, obviously, I have concerns in terms of the optics of this. When people see that kind of money being put to the police budget, and they think of, like you mentioned earlier, about what's being put into affordable housing, why can't one be transferred to the other? And we know it's not that simple, but it's hard to swallow that the police feel that they need more money. Now, police are necessary; they're absolutely necessary, and I realize that the restrictions they have in terms of they have unions, they have to abide and pay their union wages and benefits, and those are all mandatory, just like the city.
Yeah.
But it's so that's what happens. But in terms of helping out the community, one of the things that was done just before the budget was a lot of the community health centers got together and looked at ways that we could look at helping the city without using police budget in terms of community safety, because that's a big issue, like the mental health crises and things like that. That's been a big controversy. One of the issues was the fact that 911 is run by police, and therefore they send police to all calls. So that was one of the points they made. But so it's about rethinking community safety and who does what.
Okay. All right. Councillor Tierney? What's your opinion on the ask from the Ottawa Police Service for its budget?
Yeah, I've spoken to many of my residents, and as you know, Rob, I've had some tragedy in this community. Gunplay has been out of control in my mind, and the solution isn't to go backwards and less police on the ground. But I do want to highlight something that I heard during the speech yesterday from the mayor, which is encouraging, is boots on the ground in the market. I think that's something that's going to be very beneficial. We've heard calls for that before. I think that will be more than helpful. But as Theresa mentioned, we also have to deal with a separate issue, which is mental health. And, seeing more investments in mental health supports is a critical part that could save our police forces from walking into situations that, frankly, could be dealt with in another fashion. I want to touch on also the housing aspect of things. You kind of mentioned moving stuff around. Again, really important. We have to focus on getting more affordable housing in this city.
Yeah. Well, just on that point, Councillor, you mentioned earlier in our conversation about the roads and the budget increase for the roads. Yeah. Okay, which I know is a frequent complaint. Believe me, I take the phone calls on it on the radio, and I know you get the call, calls into your offices. You get the calls into your offices about roads and the condition of the roads. The roads budget is going up 56%. Am I reading that right?
That's correct. So it's
56% to $203 million, right? Okay, maybe you've underinvested in the roads, or maybe this is like a pre-election roads budget. I don't know. But versus $17 million more for affordable and supportive housing, like 203 versus 17. Some people say it's not a progressive budget, Councillor Tierney. That's what some people say. I'm not saying I'm saying it. Some people are saying it. It's not a progressive budget. What would you say to those critics who say this is not a progressive budget?
Well, this is the largest spend from any Ottawa council on housing at $17 million. It dovetails well with the spending we've done in the past. The problem we really have as a municipality, Rob, is we need to have some tools put in place so we can actually start getting inclusionary zoning. And I know Theresa completely supports that, which will help us drive the money to be able to pay for that housing. And B, I'm a board member of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we all agree about a national housing strategy, and the feds have to pitch in. We need money trickle down to municipalities because we can't afford to do everything for everybody, unfortunately. Okay, so we need a hand. Now, I do think it's progressive. 17 million is a big spend. I remember back in the day, it was like 14, started going up and up and up. Well, now we're opening up 1,700 new units in a term of council. That's pretty progressive in my mind.
Okay.
Could we do more? Absolutely.
We only have 1 minute. We only have 1 minute, Councillor Kavanagh. Blame Councillor Tierney. He took all your time.
Sorry.
Is this a progressive budget, Councillor Kavanagh? Is it a progressive enough budget for you?
No, it isn't.
No? No?
I am concerned about the fact that even though that there is an increase for affordable housing, I appreciate having increases, but I'm also concerned about the fact that it's not enough. It's rather a backlog, and the fact that the budgets have been capped for many, many years. I mean, it's 3% now, and past it was 2%, and there's a backlog, which is why the roads have gotten, in worse shape, because only so many get done in a year. So you get a backlog. And I'm interested in active transportation, making sure we have those cycle tracks too, and sidewalks, and those are very important. And actually, I hear more about that than the roads, believe it or not.
Okay.
All right.
That's
actually a top concern.
Well, I know
before
it is big.
Before you hang up, Theresa, plug your event tomorrow. I think it's very important.
Oh, yes. I've got a breakfast tomorrow with the mayor about the effects on the pandemic on women.
Oh, okay.
So, and we're having a lot of leaders in the community and representation across the board on what the pandemic has done specifically for women. Because it's already known that they have taken the brunt of it.
How do people get involved in that?
Economically, every way. What?
How if somebody wants to? Is it a Zoom thing or?
Yeah, you can Zoom in. So I think it's through Facebook, and it's going to be.
What time is that at, Councillor Kavanagh?
We start at 8:00 for the breakfast.
Okay.
I believe it'll be 9:00 for the actual.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for